Chapter 831. As the two of them looked at each other, the people around them made way for them, leaving enough space for their fight. As the challenge was imminent, everyone had different thoughts. In the audience seats, the smiling youth and junior sister he were observing the fight. Suyu's true power was the standard to determine whether he could really fight Jian Wuxing to a draw. Senior brother Liu, why don't you guess how many moves Suyu can take for Xiao Qingfeng? Junior sister, he asked as she stared at Suyu. Senior brother Liu looked at Suyu and didn't reply immediately. Seeing senior brother Liu fall silent, junior sister, he said in surprise, "What? Could it be that senior brother Liu thinks that this person has a chance of winning?" Senior brother Liu remained silent for a long time, then looked at the outer sanctum's great palace master and shook his head. "I'm afraid that it's impossible. The difference between their vital energy and body tests is too great, so it's almost impossible for him to win. I'm just wondering, why did the great palace master arrange for them to fight? There's no suspense in their fight, and Suyu will surely lose in less than 10 moves. Junior sister, he then said, the great palace master probably wanted to spare Xiao Qingfeng's life. After all, he's a genius ranked 10th in the outer sanctum. It would be a pity to kill him. Expelling him from the sanctum would also be considered a mercy. That's why he arranged for such a weak opponent like Suyu to fight." Senior brother Liu nodded. "That's the only plausible explanation." Lao Ai and Wei Zheng were paying close attention to this fight, especially Lao Ai. If Suyu displayed outstanding fighting prowess, he would surely be able to defeat Jian Wuxing, and this news would surely reach the right palace master's ears. This was what Lao Ai didn't want to see the most. If the right palace master learned that he had offended such a genius repeatedly and caused him to join the left palace master's camp, he would surely be punished. As for Wei Zheng, he still didn't believe that it was possible for Suyu to fight Jian Wuxing, who was in the same cultivation realm as him. Jian Wuxing was a legend pursued by countless people in the Red Blood Palace, and no one could surpass her. Even the Red Blood Palace's past palace masters couldn't compare to her. Even Jian Wuxing, who was only a grade 3 fairy, was enough to scare grade 9 fairies. Unless Suyu's fighting prowess surpassed that of a grade 9 fairy, it would be difficult for him to defeat Jian Wuxing. Judging from the two tests, the vital energy of a level 5 fairy and the body of a level 6 fairy were far from meeting the requirements. Forget it. Regardless of whether he managed to fight Jian Wuxing to a draw or not, I'll give him another chance. With his level, he is qualified to become the left palace master's disciple, Wei Zheng thought to himself. The left and right palace masters looked at the grand palace master meaningfully as they watched the battle that was about to unfold. In the end, the great palace master was still benevolent and deliberately gave Xiao Qingfeng a way out. As long as Xiao Qingfeng could defeat Suyu, he would be able to leave the Red Blood Palace alive. After all, he was a person who cherished talent. The alluring cabinet mistress also cast a glance at the great palace master. She understood his intentions clearly. She also didn't have high hopes for Suyu's victory in this fight, as the disparity between them was too great. However, even though Suyu had been defeated, she still had high hopes for his future. The two tests were enough to show that Suyu had great potential, and he still had many secrets about his cultivation. If he were to be nurtured, he would definitely become a strong martial artist in the outer sanctum in the future. The alluring cabinet master collected her thoughts and announced solemnly, "The competition will now officially begin. Everyone, challenge the opponents you have chosen." The crowd immediately chose an empty space and prepared to start the competition. Suyu and Xiao Qingfeng looked at each other from a distance, while their auras surged toward each other. Hatred appeared on Xiao Qingfeng's face as he said, "My bright future was ruined by you. Do you know how much I hate you?" As the outer sanctum's 10th expert, it was almost certain that he would become an almighty divine master and enter the inner sanctum to further his cultivation. However, Suyu had plotted against him and caused him to lose everything. If he left the sanctum, he wouldn't be able to find a great faction like the Red Blood Palace, which would allow him to continue his cultivation. It could be said that Suyu had ruined his future. How deep was his hatred? He, who used Shaoli and tried to kill me. who sent 2 inner sanctum disciples to kill me in the elegant spirit mountain, who used Shangwan Yunk and tried to join hands with Lao AI to kill me. It seems like it was you, great genius Xiao. I just gave you a taste of your own medicine and plotted against you once. Yet, you still hate me so much? Since you plotted against me 3 times in a row, shouldn't I hate you even more? So you spoke in mockery. Xiao Qingfeng only had himself to blame for his current predicament. Although he had a grudge against the Xiao family's master, he wasn't narrow-minded enough to deal with all of the Xiao family's disciples in the outer sanctum. However, Xiao Qingfeng plotted against him several times and didn't let him off the hook. So you couldn't be blamed for this. Humph! Have I ever harmed you? Have you ever harmed me like this? Xiao Qingfeng shouted at him. Suyu snorted disdainfully. What a joke. If you had succeeded, would I still be alive and talking to you? You really don't know your place. Xiao Qingfeng was left speechless, and his expression became ice-cold. Humph! Cut the crap. I will defeat you with a single punch, and I won't let down the great palace master's kindness toward me. Even the outsiders could understand the great palace master's kindness to Xiao Qingfeng, so Xiao Qingfeng himself could understand it even more clearly. Kindness? Hee, you really want it, but you still haven't asked me about it. How could Suyu let him live? Suyu wanted to settle all debts with him. Xiao Qingfeng didn't say anything else. He just snorted softly and dashed forward. He then pulled back his right fist and thrust it forward when it was 3 feet away from Suyu. This fist contained 80% of his power, which was 7 elephants' power. Suyu, who only had a fleshly body of 6 elephants and a half, wasn't a match for him. However, Suyu was still calm, and while the crowd was surprised, he didn't retreat. Instead, he took a step forward, raised his right fist, and faced Xiao Qingfeng's fist head-on. Is he courting death? Even if he uses his whole body's power, he still won't be a match for Xiao Qingfeng. His arm will probably be shattered. The crowd was surprised by Su Yu's strange reaction. His fleshly body of 6 elephants and a half would end up in a miserable state when facing a 7 elephants' power. His arm would probably be shattered. What a fool. Even if he wants to lose the competition, he doesn't need to go to such extremes, does he? Does he really think that Xiao Qingfeng is afraid of the great palace master and doesn't dare to injure him? Wei Zheng raised his brows. He couldn't help but reconsider whether he should give Suyu a chance to join the left palace master's camp. Such a person, who didn't have any fighting experience, wasn't qualified to join the left palace master's camp. The crowd was astonished. Even Xiao Qingfeng was startled for a moment, but he soon understood what Suyu was thinking. He laughed nastily and said, "It's true that I don't dare to injure you on purpose, but since you came here and courted death, the great palace master can't blame me for your injuries." As he spoke, his fist didn't lose any of its momentum, and it bombarded Su Yu's right fist. He had expected that Su Yu's right fist would crush his arm due to its overwhelming power and leave him with an injury that was neither light nor heavy. This way, he could take revenge for Su Yu before he left the sanctum. However, when their fists collided, Xiao Qingfeng's expression changed drastically. The scene where he had expected Su Yu to be easily repelled didn't occur. Instead, his opponent's fist contained a 7 elephants' power. The boundless power surged out of it and went into Xiao Qingfeng's right fist. In an instant, Xiao Qingfeng came to a sudden realization, and he shouted angrily, "You hid your power!" When he looked at Su Yu's wrist, he saw a faint golden blood channel flickering on it. The first dragon's body was what he had been hiding. Su Yu's sudden eruption of power caught Xiao Qingfeng off guard. Although he managed to condense his whole body's power in time, he was still repelled and sent flying back several meters. He felt a piercing pain in his bones. If his bones weren't so hard, his arm would have probably been shattered by the previous attack. Even so, his arm was still shivering, and he had suffered a great loss. The crowd went into an uproar. It's impossible. Did he hide his power? Doesn't this mean that his power reached 7 elephants? The crowd exclaimed in surprise. How did Suyu manage to cultivate such a powerful body? Wei Jing opened his mouth. He had assumed that Suyu was stupid, but it turned out that he had been hiding his power. Such a scene was beyond everyone's expectations, including the three palace masters. A body refining technique that can raise one elephant's power? It seems like it's at least a low-grade, legendary cultivation technique. The great palace master muttered to himself. The two young palace masters looked at each other at the same time, both feeling a little surprised. Su Yu's performance was too dazzling, and it had surpassed his performance in the exam. On the stage, Su Yu lowered his right hand and asked, "Is this what you meant by defeating me with a single strike?" Xiao Qingfeng was infuriated. He had assumed that he would be able to defeat Su Yu with just 80% of his power, but he didn't expect that Su Yu would be able to hide a part of his power from him. "Why are you so complacent? The real fight will begin soon." Xiao Qingfeng shook his hand. His arm had been injured by the previous attack, and he couldn't use his whole body's power. So, he could only crush Su Yu in other aspects. Clang! A soul-stirring sound echoed out as a pitch-black longsword appeared in Xiao Qingfeng's hand. The black longsword emitted a ghostly energy, which made people shudder with fear. At the same time, the sword's body started wriggling. At first glance, it seemed like a living creature. This sword's name is Pentaghost, and once it's used, it will surely bleed. If you're sensible, you should immediately admit defeat. Otherwise, even I might not be able to control this sword, Xiao Qingfeng said. Su Yu swept his gaze over it. The sword's spiritual pressure was astonishing. It was a low-grade spiritual artifact, but it was a top-notch one. In terms of might, it wasn't any weaker than a middle-grade spiritual artifact. Xiao Qingfeng is going all out, and he even took out the Pentaghost. If he holds this sword, even some newly advanced level 9 fairies might not be a match for him. This sword is extremely evil. I've also heard about it. It's rumored that it was once the Ghost Clan's weapon, and it was made from the bones of a divine master realm demonic beast. It has an extremely evil nature, and once it's unsheathed, even its master might not be able to control it completely. When senior brother Lu and junior sister he saw this, anticipation appeared on their faces. Whether Su Yu can fight Jian Wuxing to a draw will depend on whether he can block this sword strike. Many people raised their throats and paid close attention to this sword strike. The other examinees in the same arena also stopped to watch the fight. Xiao Qingfeng's life and death would depend on this sword strike. Su Yu said calmly, "Attack me with your whole power. I can let you die in peace." Xiao Qingfeng shook his head and said with pity, "Ignorance is really terrifying. Since that's the case, then prepare to pay the price with your blood." Sizzle. Xiao Qingfeng slashed out with his sword, and a 30-meter-long black sword energy swept through half of the arena with a destructive force. It was extremely sharp, and as it cut through the air, it caused the air to tremble slightly. Su Yu didn't budge an inch, and when the sword energy swept over him, his whole body flickered with a black radiance, while a hideous black armor appeared on his body. At the same time, as Su Yu instilled his powerful vital energy into it, a black light barrier appeared on the surface of the armor. When the powerful sword energy struck the light barrier, it caused it to cave in, but it still couldn't destroy it. After the stalemate lasted for a moment, the sword energy weakened and was deflected by the light barrier. Su Yu didn't even have to fight back to defend himself. The Eternal Stone King armor used to be a high-grade spiritual artifact, but now it was damaged and only a half-finished product was left. In the past, he had needed the vital energy and crystals to activate the light barrier, but now Su Yu's vital energy was greater than the crystals, so his defensive power had risen by a great deal. Is this the Ghost Clan's defensive magical treasure? The expressions of the three palace masters changed slightly. The two lesser palace masters were bewildered, while the great palace master was also surprised. They didn't expect that Su Yu would have such a powerful defensive magical treasure, and it seemed like its grade was quite high. He managed to block that sword strike. Someone exclaimed in surprise. Xiao Qingfeng obviously didn't hold anything back, but he still couldn't deal with Su Yu. Lao AI clenched his fists tightly, while killing intent surged in his heart. He mustn't let the right palace master know about this person's existence. Junior sister, he was startled. What a shocking, defensive, magical treasure. This lad still had such a magical treasure. Now, I'm starting to believe that he can really fight Jian Wuxing to a draw. It would be difficult for Jian Wuxing to break through such a defensive, magical treasure. Senior brother Lu heaved a sigh of relief. Then, we can go back and report this matter. This lad can really fight Jian Wuxing to a draw. Junior sister He's eyes unexpectedly lit up. Why are you in such a hurry? Let's wait and see the final outcome. At first, she disdained Suyu, but now, she was looking forward to the final outcome. Senior brother Lu asked in surprise. Junior sister He, do you think that he can win? Junior sister He stared at Suyu, but didn't speak. On the stage. I'm sorry, but you aren't the only one who has such a treasure, Suyu said with a faint smile. Xiao Qingfeng's eyes widened, while his pupils contracted. This is a damaged high-grade spiritual artifact? How did you get it? He couldn't understand how a level 3 fairy could possess such a shocking treasure. Do you think that I will answer you? Suyu asked. Xiao Qingfeng's expression became gloomy, as Suyu unexpectedly possessed such a powerful magical treasure. However, this still wasn't the end of it. Come again. Xiao Qingfeng finally became serious, and as he observed it carefully, he discovered that there was a fist-sized hole in Su Yu's Eternal Stone King armor's abdomen. Xiao Qingfeng's eyes lit up as he approached Su Yu with his sword, then thrust it at the hole in the Eternal Stone King armor's abdomen. Su Yu sighed inwardly. The Eternal Stone King armor's weak point was too obvious for fairies, and it was a fatal weakness for divine masters. So, he must quickly repair it. As he thought of this, a small golden sword flew out of Su Yu's sleeves, and he used it to block the black sword's tip. Crack! An intense sound of metal colliding echoed out, and it shook everyone's eardrums. The Heavenly Orchid Silver Bamboo Sword was a semi-manufactured spiritual artifact, and Su Yu hadn't used it for a long time. What a hard, small sword. It didn't leave even the slightest flaw on it. Xiao Qingfeng was slightly surprised. After all, the Pen of Ghost was a top-notch, low-grade spiritual artifact, and there were few semi-manufactured spiritual artifacts that it couldn't destroy. Su Yu's palm became slightly numb. Although he had managed to block the sword, Xiao Qingfeng's power still managed to injure his palm. Umph! You really have many treasures, but if you think that my Pen of Ghost is only at this level, then you are really looking down on me. Xiao Qingfeng calmed down and revealed a sinister smile. Upon witnessing such a sight, many people sighed. It seems like Su Yu has also been duped. This battle has already come to an end. As Wei Zheng looked at such a sight, he felt more at ease for an unknown reason. He then said calmly, "It has come to an end." The two lesser palace masters nodded. It's also time for it to come to an end. It wasn't easy for Su Yu to fight until now. Su Yu was startled, and a great sense of danger welled up in his heart. Sizzle. As a sharp sound echoed out, the black sword in Xiao Qingfeng's hand unexpectedly disintegrated. It had disintegrated into many sharp thorns, which then joined together to form a unique weapon that was shaped like a thorn. It seemed like a whip, but it wasn't as long as a whip. Moreover, the thorn was surprisingly a living creature. After it was blocked by the Heavenly Orchid Silver Bamboo Sword, the thorn went around the small sword and penetrated the Eternal Stone King armor's gap. All of this happened in an instant, and it caught everyone off guard. It seems like I won. Xiao Qingfeng revealed a calm smile, as if he had just won. At this moment, the outcome of the battle had already been decided. However, Xiao Qingfeng's expression changed slightly when he saw that Su Yu didn't seem surprised at all. Instead, he curled up the corners of his mouth and said, "Well, is that the case? Why do I feel like I was the one who won?" Chapter 832. Xiao Qingfeng's reaction was quite fast, and he moved his shoulder without giving a second thought. Even so, Xiao Qingfeng still felt a sense of crisis, and when he quickly turned his head around to take a look, he saw that a similar small golden sword had already reached his back. His heart would be penetrated by Su Yu before the thorns could pierce through it. Space attribute. Xiao Qingfeng's eyelids twitched. This sword possessed a faint space attribute, and it was because of this that it had appeared behind his back quietly. In the face of imminent danger, Just as Xiao Qingfeng was about to be killed, the thorny vines in his palm suddenly disintegrated once again. They turned into sharp barbs that formed a thick shield that protected Xiao Qingfeng's back. Clang! As a soft sound echoed out, the small golden sword was sent flying away. It deviated slightly from its original trajectory and brushed past Xiao Qingfeng's right arm, causing blood to blossom on it. Such a scene caused the crowd to exclaim in admiration. In just a few breaths' time, the situation between the two of them had been reversed. Swoosh! Suyu flicked his fingers, causing the two small golden swords to fly back into his palm. Suyu was slightly surprised when he saw the shield on Xiao Qingfeng's back. In fact, when he had first seen it, Suyu had already noticed that this weapon was quite strange. The sword had a soul hidden within it, which meant that it was a living being. This was why Suyu wasn't surprised that it had suddenly disintegrated and turned into thorns. He just didn't expect that his well-prepared strike would be blocked by the Pentaghost. Xiao Qingfeng had just survived a calamity, and he was quite distressed. The previous sword strike was too dangerous. He had assumed that he would surely be able to defeat Suyu once he took out the Pentaghost, but he didn't expect that Suyu would have so many semi-manufactured spiritual artifacts. When he heard the uproar outside, Xiao Qingfeng became even more anxious and grave. If he had been careless and couldn't end the fight quickly, then now, even though he had taken out the Pentaghost, he still couldn't defeat Suyu. So, how could he remain calm and composed? His initial confidence that he could easily defeat Suyu had disappeared long ago. He realized that he had underestimated Suyu, and if he didn't use his whole power, he might end up suffering an unexpected defeat. Once he was defeated, the great palace master would surely fulfill his promise and take his life. His heart was unprecedentedly heavy, and the carefree expression on his face had disappeared. It seems like I must use my ultimate technique, Xiao Qingfeng said in a deep voice. The Pentaghost in his palm disintegrated once again. This time, it wasn't in the shape of a sword or a thorn. Instead, it condensed into a fist-sized ball. The expressions of the people who were familiar with the Pentaghost gradually became grave. The Pentaghost's ultimate form. Has Xiao Qingfeng been forced into a corner? I'm afraid that Su Yuxian is in danger. Even someone who has just entered the level 9 fairy realm would find it difficult to resist the Pentaghost's final form. Among the 10 great outer sanctum disciples, only the 4 great demons would be able to resist it. As for the others, they would be in danger. While the audience was still discussing, Xiao Qingfeng had already made his move. Inescapable net. As Xiao Qingfeng shouted in a low voice, he imbued his vital energy into the black sphere and compressed it, then threw it at Suyu. When it was 100 feet away from Suyu, the compressed vital energy in the black ball suddenly exploded. The powerful force of the explosion disintegrated the black sphere, turning it into black barbs that numbered in the thousands. At a glance, it was as if a hornet's nest had been poked open. In an instant, the sky and earth were covered with ferocious black barbs. Furthermore, with the support of the explosion, his speed was astonishingly fast. There was no way he could escape the barbs that filled the sky. The damaged Eternal Stone King armor could not withstand such a concentrated barrage of attacks. The outcome had already been decided. The crowd felt like they could already hear Su Yu admitting defeat. However, the voice that they had expected didn't appear. Instead, a calm and composed expression appeared before the crowd's eyes. Suyu let out a breath and took back his 2 small swords. He had unexpectedly given up on his weapons at such a critical moment. How could he admit defeat so easily? The crowd was startled. Someone sighed and said, "It's already amazing that he was able to force the level 8 fairy realm, Xiao Qingfeng, to use the Pentaghost's final form. Even if he admits defeat, he will still be able to look down upon the crowd." Suyu didn't leave the arena in front of the crowd's admiring and regretful gazes. Instead, he faced the barbs that filled the sky. Wait, it seems like he doesn't want to admit defeat. Did you all feel the change in the world's spiritual energy in his surroundings? Someone with sharp senses asked. Well, it seems like it's true. The world's spiritual energy in his surroundings is starting to go berserk, and it seems like it's flowing toward him. Try sensing it again. It isn't just the world's spiritual energy that is flowing toward him, as even the air itself is flowing toward him. While the crowd was still astonished, the air in a 300-meter radius around Suyu was flowing toward him. This caused the air in the 300-meter radius to become a vacuum. The air that had gathered around Suyu started revolving around him. It was dancing in the air while it was being compressed unceasingly. Since it was being compressed so intensely, a pitch-black color had appeared. If one looked at it from a distance, it would seem like a black cloth was revolving around Suyu. Most of the fairies present could feel an aura emanating from the cloth. What kind of cultivation technique is this? Why is it so powerful? The crowd asked in surprise. The pupils of the three palace masters, senior brother Lu, junior sister He, Lao Ai, and Wei Zheng, all contracted. The expressions of the demon mountains, 4 demons, also change at the same time. It's a middle-grade legendary cultivation technique, the first level's top class. Bing Wuxin said word by word, her pretty eyes flickering with fighting spirit. Gongsun Wuxie's expression became serious for the first time, while her purple, gem-like eyes flickered with a strange light. He unexpectedly hid such a divine technique. He really hid it well. Tian Renyao's eyes flickered with an extraordinary splendor, while his face became flushed. I knew that Brother Yuxian was really amazing. Bai Shanliang's expression changed greatly as he looked at Suyu. I didn't know that he was this powerful. Although they acknowledged Suyu, they had never acknowledged his power. In their eyes, he was only at the level 5 fairy realm. In a sense, they had assumed that they were supporting Suyu. However, what they didn't expect was that Suyu's fighting prowess was on par with theirs. His fighting prowess startled the outer sanctum's disciples. The black cloth was condensed to its pinnacle, while the barbs that filled the sky swept over. Suyu's starry eyes shone with a sharp light, and as he pointed at the sky, the black cloth that was revolving around him started spreading out in all directions. At first glance, a circular black shock wave swept over the space within a 300-meter radius. The barbs, which had erupted out, were like black wasps that were being extinguished by the black shock wave. In the twinkling of an eye, the whole sky was swept away, and not even a single barb was left behind. Vaguely, a mournful scream could be heard. It was the soul hidden in the Penta ghost, which had been annihilated by the destructive shock wave. The black shock wave didn't lose its momentum, and it continued sweeping toward Xiao Qingfeng. Xiao Qingfeng had already lost his weapon, so he didn't have any defense left. Although he hurriedly revolved his vital energy to protect his body, he still couldn't resist the shock wave. Crack! The vital energy on the surface of Xiao Qingfeng's body was shattered, and he let out a miserable groan as he was swept away by the shock wave. He then spouted a mouthful of blood before he fell off the stage. The shock wave lingered on the stage for a long time, and it was only after a long while that it gradually dissipated. However, the shock that still lingered in the hearts of the crowd couldn't be erased. Suyu had unexpectedly won. At this moment, no one could remain calm. It turned out that Suyu was so powerful. It turned out that the central demon's power was so great. The outer sanctum's disciples, who had thrown their identity badges at him and expressed their desire to challenge him, felt their hearts palpitate. They couldn't help but rejoice inwardly that they hadn't fought him. Otherwise, they would have ended up in an embarrassing state. Crack! Wei Zheng subconsciously crushed a corner of the stone chair he was sitting on. His pupils contracted to the size of needles as he exclaimed, "He's so powerful!" His heart was filled with shock, as he had assumed that Xu Weiyan had done him a favor by introducing him to the Left Palace Master's faction. It was only now that he realized what kind of powerful genius she had recommended. A level 3 fairy possessed a fighting prowess comparable to a level 9 fairy. There weren't many people in the inner sanctum with such a talent. He couldn't help but admit that his judgment, which he was so proud of, had really misjudged him. He had unexpectedly rejected such a monstrous genius. If the Left Palace Master learned that such a genius had slipped away in front of his eyes, he would surely be disappointed. Wei Zheng quickly made up his mind, and he decided that he must have a talk with Su Yu again. Shock appeared on the faces of the two lesser palace masters. Su Yu had unexpectedly won. They looked at the great palace master at the same time. This competition was supposed to give Xiao Qingfeng a way out, but the outcome was beyond the great palace master's expectations. They couldn't help but worry about Su Yu, as they wondered whether the great palace master would fly into a rage. However, they heaved a sigh of relief when the great palace master revealed a gratified smile at the corners of his mouth. Not bad. While the two of them heaved a sigh of relief, they couldn't help but be surprised by the fact that Su Yu had unexpectedly received a not bad evaluation from the great palace master. The great palace master had been in charge of the outer sanctum for 100 years, and he had only ever praised one person. That person was Jian Wuxing's daughter, the inner sanctum's #1 expert, Bing Wuxing. Her name only differed by a single word from Bing Wuxing's, but they were two completely different people. She was the current generation's female genius, who was known by everyone in the 18 blessed and heavenly lands. Her status was even more illustrious, as she was the lifeless sword prefecture's prefecture king, Jian Wuxing's daughter, Bing Wuxing. It was rumored that half a year ago, she had fought against Lu Chui, who had just left the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion. She was known as the 18 blessed and heavenly lands #1 female genius. No one knew the outcome of the battle, but news spread from the Purple Cloud Palace that Lu Chui had entered the Purple Cloud Palace's life and death secret realm to undergo a near-death training. As for Bing Wuxing, she went back to the Red Blood Palace and continued with her usual cultivation. The outcome of the battle could be discerned from this. Her fighting prowess rivaled the 18 blessed and heavenly lands #1 expert, Gu Taishu. In the past 100 years, the great palace master had only said such words to Bing Wuxing, and he hadn't said such words to anyone else. He was quite sure of Su Yu's performance. Below the stage, Xiao Qingfeng's mouth was filled with blood, and his eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. Impossible. How could a middle-grade legendary cultivation techniques, first level, be cultivated to perfection without at least 20 years of cultivation or the guidance of a great teacher? Unless one was a genius with outstanding comprehension abilities, it was rare for one to comprehend a middle-grade legendary cultivation techniques, first level, to perfection in just 10 years. Most of them were guided by a great teacher, but Su Yu just entered the outer sanctum. So how could he have gotten a great teacher? I can't accept this. Is Su Yu really just 20 years old? Great Palace Master, please uphold justice for me. Xiao Qingfeng was already at a critical juncture, so how could he be willing to lower his head? In fact, many people had their reservations about Su Yu's age. Was this old man, who seemed like an immortal, really a young genius like them? Now that Su Yu is in the limelight, many people were jealous of him. I strongly request that we use the Outer Sanctum's Bright Heart Mirror to examine Su Yu's true age. As long as he is in front of the Bright Heart Mirror, his true age will be revealed, as well as his appearance. Xiao Qingfeng was aware that Su Yu wouldn't be able to sneak into the Outer Sanctum because of his age. After all, his true age couldn't be faked. Right now, he only wanted to stall for time. Every second counted. Many people looked at the great palace master when they heard him. They all supported his proposal. If Su Yu is really a young genius like them, then they would have to accept him. However, if Su Yu is just an old man, then it wouldn't be strange for him to possess such a cultivation technique. Su Yu's heart shuddered, and he had an ominous feeling. Does the outer sanctum still have a mirror that can reflect my true age? This is far from good. Several days ago, he had used Su Yu's identity in the Elegant Spirit Mountain, and if he really went through the Bright Heart Mirror's examination, then his identity would surely be exposed. Moreover, he believed that the Red Blood Palace's higher-ups should know that Su Yu was the expert who had killed the Blood Emperor. Once his identity was exposed, it would be no different than a disaster for Su Yu. That's right, the Bright Heart Mirror can really determine his true age and his appearance. The great palace master nodded slowly, causing Su Yu's heart to sink once again. The light appeared on Xiao Qingfeng's face. However, the great palace master's tone suddenly changed. However, before we determine his true age, we must first fulfill our agreement with you." Upon hearing him, everyone was shocked. Does he really want to put Xiao Qingfeng to death? Xiao Qingfeng's face was as pale as paper, and his whole body shivered. As he looked around, he suddenly noticed Lao Ai, who was among the spectators. It was as if he had just found his last hope. "Senior brother Lao, quickly save me." Xiao Qingfeng rushed toward Lao Ai. He was terrified. Lao Ai's expression changed drastically as he wondered, "How could I dare to get involved with Xiao Qingfeng at such a time?" He waved his sleeves and sent out a strong wind, which pulled Xiao Qingfeng back into the arena. He then said coldly, "You are ridiculous. You made a grave mistake first, and you didn't manage to defeat Su Yuxian. So, you should accept the great palace master's punishment. So how could I save you? You only have yourself to blame for this." Upon hearing this, Xiao Qingfeng's heart became ice cold. He had been abandoned by everyone. It was all because of his carelessness that he had fallen into Su Yu's trap. As he thought of this, anger welled up in his heart. He then looked at Su Yu ferociously and said, "It's all your fault. I will kill you first." Su Yu clasped his hands behind his back and wore a calm look on his face. However, when he had just taken a step forward, a blue light beam penetrated his chest. Xiao Qingfeng could only see a blue feather fly out of his chest and return to the great palace master's palm. "If you knew that such a day would come, then why did you act in the first place?" The great palace master collected the feather calmly. He didn't even spare a glance at Xiao Qingfeng, who was lying on the ground in a pool of his own blood. The Outer Sanctum's 10th-ranked disciple had just died in the arena. There weren't many people who sympathized with him, as he had framed an innocent disciple, Shangguan Yonk, and had almost crippled his cultivation. No matter how one looked at it, such a malignant tumor deserved to die. The crowd's attention was now focused on Su Yu. After this battle, Su Yu's name would spread far and wide in the Outer Sanctum. Besides being a demon, his terrifying power would also leave a deep impression on the Outer Sanctum's disciples. Sigh, none of the 5 demons are weak. Many disciples, who tried to challenge Su Yu, couldn't help but sigh. Wei Zheng's eyes lit up as he looked at Su Yu. Such a talent was hard to come by even in 100 years, so he must surely take him into the left palace master's faction. As Wei Zheng looked at Shuel Yin, who was standing next to Su Yu and gazing at him, he couldn't help but curl up the corners of his mouth. Shortly after, the other region's competition tests came to an end one after another. All of the disciples' power had been recorded, and they would be compared with the previous season's power to determine whether they had made any progress. The great palace master and the 2 lesser palace masters stood up and prepared to leave. However, before they left, the great palace master's gaze penetrated the crowd and fell on Su Yu. He then said calmly, "Although Xiao Qingfeng is dead, what he said isn't without reason. So, come with me to take the Bright Heart Mirrors test so that the Outer Sanctum's disciples will be convinced." Su Yu's heart sank when he heard this, as a great sense of crisis engulfed him. His expression became gloomy. If he took the test, his identity would surely be exposed. Chapter 833. It wasn't easy for him to sneak into the Red Blood Palace and focus on his training. Would he let all of his previous efforts go to waste? Just as Su Yu was struggling intensely with his thoughts, an apathetic voice suddenly reverberated in the surroundings. It was as faintly discernible as the clouds, and no one knew where the voice had come from. "This old man is currently using the Bright Heart Mirror, so there's no need to examine it. This child's lifespan has been greatly damaged, which has caused his appearance to change. There's no problem." The sudden words caused the crowd of disciples to be startled. "It's him, Senior Lan." Someone cried out in alarm, recognizing the owner of the voice. At a glance, apart from a few people who didn't know what was going on, most people revealed expressions of reverence. Even the 2 young palace masters were shocked, their expressions solemn. The Grand Palace Master looked in a certain direction of the Outer Sanctum with a respectful look on his face. He cupped his hands and bowed. "As you wish, Senior." Who could make the Great Palace Master address him as a senior? Su Yu suddenly recalled what Zixuan had said that there was a mysterious, all-creation strong man hiding in the outer sanctum. Could he be the so-called Senior Lawn? Senior Lawn only said one sentence before disappearing without a trace. After a long while, the great palace master straightened his body and looked at Suyu before he looked at the crowd and asked, "Does anyone still have any doubts about Senior Land's promise?" The outer sect disciples couldn't help but avert their gazes. Just how divine was that Senior Lawn? Since he had said that there was nothing wrong with Suyu's age, then there was really nothing to doubt. Taking in everyone's gazes, the Grand Palace Master waved his sleeves and said, "Since that's the case, the meeting will end here." After he finished speaking, the disciples in the arena gradually dispersed. However, there was still a portion of them that refused to leave even after a long time had passed. They stared fixedly at Xiao Qingfeng's corpse on the arena. As Suyu passed by Xiao Qingfeng's corpse, he suddenly had a thought, and he sucked Xiao Qingfeng's spatial ring, as well as the destroyed Pentaghost. This scene caused the expressions of the disciples who had stopped moving to become ugly, and they couldn't help but curse their bad luck. They were also eyeing Xiao Qingfeng's wealth. After all, he was a level 9 fairy, and his wealth was surely astonishing. Unfortunately, it was picked up by Zhongyao. He had just displayed his terrifying battle prowess, so who would dare to rush up and snatch the central demon's things? After Suyu went back to the Demon Mountain, he still stayed in the little Demoness mansion. He didn't manage to gain much from his fight with Xiao Qingfeng. Everyone knew that his fighting prowess was shocking, but none of them knew that the power he had displayed was just the tip of the iceberg. After all, he had killed more than 1 or 2 divine masters, so a trifling level 9 fairy realm expert was nothing to him. At this moment, he was thinking about that mysterious Senior Lawn. Was he really using the Mirror of Clear Heart? Or was he helping him out? Could it really be such a coincidence that Senior Lawn was using the Bright Heart Mirror when Suyu was in danger? After thinking for a moment, Suyu shook his head slightly. He was not related to this Senior Lawn, so it was unlikely that he would help him out of this predicament. However, he could be sure that there was indeed a mysterious all creations hidden in the outer sanctum. He would have to be cautious in his training in the future. Otherwise, his identity would be easily discovered by an all creations old monster. Now that the quarterly test had ended, there was nothing for him to do in the sect. He needed to rush to Tianya City to accumulate merit points. According to the little devil, the glittering jewel wonderland was a great relic of the century that had shaken Jiuzhou. There were many opportunities, and it was an opportunity to change the fate of many people. So you mustn't miss this opportunity. However, the number of merit points he needed was astronomical. He needed 4 million merit points, and he only had half a year left. As a disciple who still hadn't paid off his debts, accumulating 4 million merit points in half a year was extremely difficult. Hence, he mustn't miss any opportunity to get great merit points. However, before leaving, Suyu still needed to go to the cultivation room once more to refine the devil's hair and cultivate the 9 dragons' devil-subduing art to the next level. When he was just about to leave, the jade pendant on Suyu's waist emitted a clear beeping sound. When he took it off, he saw that it was a pitch-black jade pendant, which was trembling slightly and emitting a beeping sound. Delight appeared on Suyu's face. After waiting for such a long time, it has finally come. This jade pendant was a communication jade pendant left behind by the soul-seizing palace's elder Liao. It was a pair of yin and yang, and as long as 2 people wore it, they would be able to determine each other's location no matter how far apart they were. It seemed like Elder Liao had already found the heart-refining mortal dust liquid's material seed, and it was in the vicinity of the outer sanctum. So you had been waiting for this material for a long time. It was a middle-grade spirit elixir, and it was an ancient elixir recipe. It could strengthen a middle-stage fairy's cultivation, and most importantly, it could temper one's soul. Suyu's current soul was only at the level 4 fairy realm, and according to the 9 Suns Cosmos Sword Formations requirements, he needed a divine master's soul to control the 9 flying swords. Hence, for Suyu, this medicine was of utmost importance. Suyu immediately stood up and left the Demon Mountain, where he ran into Elder Liao. When he left the Demon Mountain, he ran into Gongsun Wuxia, who had her head lowered and didn't speak. His usually smiling face collapsed, and he looked dispirited like a frosted eggplant. "Well, Wuxia, what's wrong?" Suyu asked in surprise. When Gongsun Wuxia heard him, she raised her head, and when she saw that it was Suyu, she curled her lips and said, "I won't tell you." Humph. She immediately turned from a defeated rooster into a swan, and she raised her head high as she passed by Suyu. Suyu was slightly confused, as Gongsun Wuxia had a strange temperament and was hard to understand. Suyu didn't pay any attention to her, so he left the outer sanctum and followed the jade pendant's instructions. After 4 hours, he entered the fairy confining forest and stopped in front of a spacious forest. When he swept his gaze over the place, he didn't see Elder Liao. It seemed like he had hidden himself out of caution. His eyes flickered with a silver-white light, and his surroundings became three-dimensional. None of the living beings could hide from him. Suyu landed on a boulder, clasped his hands behind his back, and said, "You don't need to hide anymore. It's me." A short moment later, the boulder shook, and an old man emerged from the ground beneath it. Who else could it be but Elder Liao? When Elder Liao saw Suyu, who had a sage-like demeanor, he bowed respectfully and said, "Greetings, young master." He was quite surprised. He had hidden himself under the boulder in order to guard against the Red Blood Palace's people. After all, he was a member of the Soul-Seizing Palace, and if he appeared in the Red Blood Palace's territory rashly, he would surely be interrogated by them. What surprised him the most was that he was quite skilled in concealment, and even divine master experts wouldn't be able to see through him. Who would have expected that Suyu would see through him with just a single glance? As expected of a master who killed the Blood Emperor, his power is really terrifying. Elder Liao's heart shuddered. "Did you bring everything?" Suyu asked with an ardent look in his eyes. Elder Liao took a white ring from his sleeves and presented it to Suyu with both hands. "I brought everything, including the heartbroken zithergrass's seeds. Young master, please have a look." Suyu grabbed the white ring from a distance and held it in his hand. He then sent a wisp of his soul power into it. The contents of the ring immediately appeared in Suyu's mind. There were 9 jade boxes, which were as big as a fist, lying neatly in the space. Apart from a purplish-black seed, there were hundreds of other seeds. "Young master, the purple-black seed is the heartbroken zithergrass's seed. The Soul-Seizing Palace only has 11 or 12 of them, and I could only steal 2 of them. If I stole too many, the Soul-Seizing Palace would surely detect it. Young master, please punish me for my incompetence." 2 seeds were already enough for Suyu, as they were filled with a faint life force, which meant that they could be planted alive. As long as he allowed them to reproduce, he could get as many seeds as he wanted. "You don't need to blame yourself, as you did a good job," Suyu praised him. He had assumed that Elder Liao would need a longer time, and since he had managed to deliver them to him before he went to Tianya City, it was really timely. Elder Liao's expression relaxed as he said, "Young master, many thanks for your praise. This is just my duty. Moreover, I looked up the heartbroken zithergrass's information, and I learned that its poison is extremely strong. If a divine master expert were to consume it by mistake, he might end up dying. Ancient alchemists were also extremely careful when using it, as if they consumed too much of it, the elixir would turn into a terrifying poison." Suyu was surprised by this, but the heart-refining mortal dust liquid's recipe had strict requirements, so, as long as Suyu didn't consume it on purpose, he shouldn't have consumed too much of it. "You are very considerate." Suyu nodded. Elder Liao mulled it over for a moment, then took another object from his sleeves. It was as big as a baby's fist, and it contained a spiritual nature. It was a low-grade spiritual artifact. "This is an elixir furnace that I found in the Sanctum's elixir production room. I hope that it will be of some help to you." Elder Liao presented it to Suyu with both hands. Suyu was slightly surprised when he saw the furnace. This object was considered a top-notch, low-grade spiritual artifact, and it wasn't any weaker than the Pentaghost. As Suyu looked at Elder Liao, he couldn't help but praise him inwardly. This guy really knows how to conduct himself. Suyu had only asked him to look for seeds, but he had also asked him to look for an elixir furnace. It just so happened that Su Yu didn't have an elixir furnace, so he needed to look for one. Su Yu's eyes flickered as he put away the furnace. He then took out a spatial ring from his sleeves and gave it to Elder Liao. "You are very considerate. Take this ring as a reward." Elder Liao was startled by this, but delight soon appeared on his face. "This was a reward from Su Yu. Take a look and see whether it fits your needs. I just killed a level 9 fairy, so I took it back with me," Su Yu said indifferently as he examined the furnace. "A level 9 fairy storage ring?" Elder Liao was overjoyed. "I've struck gold." He was a level 7 fairy, so he naturally understood how much wealth a level 9 fairy storage ring contained. He couldn't help but think to himself, "It's really great to work for such a senior, as he can casually give me such a reward. It would be impossible for him to give me such a reward in the sanctum. I wouldn't dare. Young master, I will be eternally grateful for any reward you give me," Elder Liao said, while he sent his soul energy into it. When he took a look at it, he felt as if his whole body was being electrocuted. "Young master, will you really give this ring to me?" The wealth contained within it was simply too great. Just the crystal stones alone, there were 80,000 of them. Even though he had been an elder of the soul-seizing palace for dozens of years, he had only accumulated 70 or 80,000 crystals. Moreover, there were also many cultivation elixirs used by late-stage fairies. Many of them were unique to the Red Blood Palace, and they were all high-grade spirit elixirs that couldn't be found in the outside world. For example, the Flying Star Spiritual Powder, which could only be consumed by late-stage fairies, was reputed to be the best high-grade spirit elixir in the 18 blessed and heavenly lands, and it was extremely beneficial for one's cultivation. Such elixirs weren't sold in the outside world, and even if they were available, they would only be sold in the black market. There were 7 or 8 portions of the Flying Star Spiritual Powder in the ring, which was equivalent to 80,000 crystals. There were also many other materials, all of which were worth at least 30 or 40,000 crystals. What shocked him the most was that there were still 5 or 6 low-grade spiritual artifacts inside. There were also many other miscellaneous items inside the ring. He had never seen such a great amount of storage resources before. The items in the Flying Star Spiritual Ring were more than twice as large as ordinary fairies. Chapter 834. Shao Qingfeng was the right palace master's person in charge of the Outer Sanctum's black market, so he controlled a great amount of resources. But it wasn't difficult for Shao Qingfeng to keep some of them in secret. After a long time, it wasn't strange for him to have so many resources. Most of the things inside were useless to Su Yu, and even if he sold all of them, he would only get 100,000 crystals. Most importantly, he would need to spend a great deal of time and energy to deal with all of them. So, the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. His true spirit dragon tendon mission required millions of crystal stones. A mere 100,000 crystal stones was useless. So, it would be better to give them to Elder Liao as a reward and win him over. No problem. Young master, many thanks for your reward." Elder Liao's face became flushed with delight, and his depression from being enslaved disappeared. It seemed like he had run into a generous master, as he had received such a generous reward just for finding a few seeds. So, how could his reward be any less than this in the future? "Okay, you did well this time. Now, I have another mission for you. Are you willing to do it? This mission is quite troublesome, and it might take you several months or even several years," Su Yu said. "Several years?" Several years could pass in the blink of an eye for martial artists. Elder Liao nodded without hesitation. "I'm willing to go through fire and water for you." Elder Liao was motivated by such a great reward. Su Yu nodded. "Fine, I will write a letter for you. Go to the northwest of the central prefecture and look for a group of people. There aren't many of them, only about 100 million of them, and they have just settled down in the northwest. They should have formed a small city, and the strongest among them should be at the Divine Master Realm." Now that he had settled down in the Red Blood Palace, Su Yu wanted to inquire about Xia Jingyu and Qin Xiener, as well as the Jinlong world's living beings. He hoped that they could settle down somewhere in the central prefecture. The letter contained his instructions to the King of Darkness, his greetings to Xia Jingyu and Qin Xiener, as well as his recent situation. He asked them not to worry about him. Deliver a letter? Elder Liao was startled. He was prepared to go through fire and water for this mission, yet it was just a simple matter of delivering a letter. I don't know their exact location, so you will need to ask around and search for them. This will consume a lot of time and energy, so you must remember to keep a low profile and not let anyone notice them. So you stared at him, then said, after you are done, come back and report to me. Elder Liao heaved a sigh of relief and nodded. Suyu quickly wrote a letter and handed it to Elder Liao. Don't worry, young master. This old servant swears to complete this task with my life. Elder Liao cupped his hands at Suyu and left. He had already thought it through, and his future prospects would be much better if he followed Suyu than if he were to die in the soul-seizing palace. Thus, even if he had to leave the sanctum for a long time and get expelled from the soul-seizing palace, he still wanted to complete Suyu's mission first. After watching him leave, Suyu remained silent for a long time, then silently disappeared into the forest. By the time he returned to the sect, it was already evening. As Suyu looked at the time, he decided to bid farewell to the 4 demons first before entering the cultivation room to go into secluded cultivation. When he returned to the little fiend's mansion, he discovered that there were 2 people sitting quietly in the mansion. Opposite them was a smiling little fiend who was chatting amiably with them. The 2 who were being talked to tensed up, as if they were facing a great enemy. Suyu walked over in surprise and asked, Brother Yunk, Jr., Sister Qing. They were the Shangwan family's siblings, Shangwan Yunk and his younger sister, Shangwan Qinger. When they heard Suyu's voice, they felt as if they had just been granted amnesty. Shangwan Yunk quickly stood up and welcomed him. Brother Su, it's really great that you have come back. When Suyu observed Shangwan Yunk carefully, he noticed that his whole body was drenched in sweat. It was obvious that he had been scared by the little fiend. Shangwan Qinger also turned around. She looked at Suyu calmly and didn't utter a single word. Brother Yunk, did you come here to look for me? Suyu asked in confusion. Shangwan Yunk nodded and looked cautiously at Gongsun Wuxia. He then lowered his voice and asked, Brother Su, can I have a word with you? Before he could reply, the little fiend's eyes curled into crescent moons, and she said with a smile, This isn't good. You came to my house to look for my brother Yuxian, yet you want to talk behind my back. Shangwan Yunk's heart thumped, as he was quite afraid of the little fiend. Suyu glared at her angrily and said, Nonsense. You should leave for a while. Brother Yunk surely has a reason for looking for me. The little fiend waved her fists angrily and said, You be *starred. I will remember you. She then flung her braids behind her head and left without looking back. Upon seeing this, Shangwan Qinger's eyes flickered slightly. She stared at Suyu and said, I really didn't expect that the lad who used to be at my house would become the central demon of the Demon Mountain, and his abilities are frighteningly strong. Look, even Gongsun Wuxia is afraid of you. If my father knew about this, he would probably be filled with regret. Shangwan Yunk rolled his eyes at her. How can you speak to Brother Su in such a manner? Shangwan Qinger stamped her feet and crossed her arms in front of her chest as she stared at Shangwan Yunk. Why are these siblings quarreling? Brother Su, you should be aware of the 18 Blessed and Heavenly Land's current situation, right? Shangwan Yunk asked sternly. Suyu nodded slightly. It's really chaotic, and the factions outside of the 18 great factions are under attack. In the past, when he had followed Shangwan Yunk back to the Shangwan family, they had run into a mysterious beast tamer on the way, and he had almost lost his life there. Moreover, news of some factions being exterminated had spread. For example, the Shiman family, which used to be ranked 3rd, had been exterminated in a single night, without even leaving behind a single heir. All of these signs showed that there was a terrifying dark faction in the 18 Blessed and Heavenly Lands that was gradually devouring the other small factions. As the Shangwan family was ranked 2nd among the factions, it was natural for them to be afraid of such a thing. That's right, so all factions are looking for a backer in hopes of getting protection. The other factions have already found different backers, but our Shangwan family still hasn't made a decision yet, Shangwan Yunk said. Su Yu raised his brows and asked in surprise, Brother Yunk, do you mean that you want me to introduce you to the faction's experts so that the Shangwan family can protect you? He had just joined the faction, so he didn't know as many experts as Shangwan Yunk did. Moreover, there was still Palace Mistress Mo's registered disciple, Shangwan Qinger, who had come into contact with many experts. Shangwan Qinger was infuriated, so she said angrily, He doesn't want you to introduce a backer to him. He wants you to be his backer. Humph! My brother must have had a fever, so why would he choose you? Shangwan Yunk rolled his eyes at her, nodded earnestly, and said, She's right. Brother Su, I hope that you can protect the Shangwan family in the future chaos. Su Yu was confused by this, and he wondered, why does Shangwan Yunk think that I can protect his family? In fact, with Su Yu's power, as long as the faction that invaded the Shangwan family didn't have a middle-stage divine master, he could still protect it. However, with his current power, he couldn't protect it completely. After he mulled it over for a moment, Su Yu said, I can't really be considered a backer, but if the Shangwan family is in trouble, you can look for me. If it's necessary, I will surely help you. As a friend, if the Shangwan family was in trouble, and Su Yu had the power to save it, he would surely help them. But if the enemy was too strong, Su Yu wouldn't be able to help. Brother Su, I knew that you were a loyal person. Shangwan Yunk revealed a faint smile. Brother Su, you can set your mind at ease. It seems like that faction will still need some time before they attack. So, during this time, the Shangwan family will take the initiative to strengthen its defenses. Brother Su, you can also quickly stabilize your cultivation. I believe that even if that faction invades, it won't be able to harm the Shangwan family. As he spoke, Shangwan Yunk took out the 5-color exquisite pagoda from his sleeves. When it appeared, the metal, wood, water, fire, and earth auras in the room became more intense by more than 30%. I can't repay you, so you should keep this object. This pagoda contains the 5 elements lore, and if you comprehend it often, it will be very beneficial to your cultivation of the 5 elements. Shangwan Yunk stuffed it into Su Yu's hands, then instructed him, Brother Su, I hope that you won't spread it. This is my only request. Su Yu held it in his palm, subconsciously. In an instant, the remaining disastrous fire in Su Yu's body started flickering, and it seemed like it was going out of control. Su Yu was startled by this, and he hurriedly used his vital energy to envelop the 5-color small pagoda. He then said in surprise, What a shocking small pagoda! At this moment, Shangwan Qinger curled her lips and snorted. Isn't it obvious? This is our Shangwan family's secret canon, the 5 elements lore art, which has been passed down since ancient times. It's our Shangwan family's secret, and it won't spread to any outsiders. Yet my brother insisted on giving it to you. Let's see how my father will deal with him when he goes back. Upon hearing this, Su Yu's expression became solemn, and he returned the 5-color small pagoda to Shangwan Yunk. Brother Yunk, I can't accept such a precious object. Shangwan Yunk didn't take it, and he just smiled. This object was passed down to me, so it's up to me to decide who I give it to. His expression became somewhat sad and bitter. Moreover, no one has managed to comprehend this secret canon for several hundred years. So, leaving it in the hands of the Shangwan family will just be like a pearl covered in dust. Brother Su, if you give it to me, you might be able to shine even brighter. Brother Su, you should just accept it. As long as you don't spread it, it'll be fine. Su Yu still felt somewhat apologetic. After all, handing over a family's inheritance to him had an extraordinary significance. When Shangwan Qinger saw Su Yu's hesitation, she said angrily, Since my brother asked you to accept it, then just accept it. In any case, this object can't be exposed to the public, and it can't be given to stronger martial artists. So, it's only suitable for you. Don't let down my brother's good intentions. After she spoke, Shangwan Qinger stomped her feet and left angrily. After hesitating for a while, Su Yu bowed to her gratefully and accepted the small, exquisite pagoda. Brother Su, don't mind my younger sister. She was in a bad mood recently, but she still agreed to give the 5-element mysteries art to you. Shangguan Yunk looked at his younger sister's back and sighed helplessly. Suyu was surprised, so he asked, "What's wrong?" Shangguan Yunk replied helplessly, "It's rumored that it's related to a person called Suyu, who fought alongside my younger sister in the mysterious heavenly divine pavilion. It was only recently that we learned that he came to the Jiuzhou continent, and once he appeared, he chased after the Blood Emperor and killed him." He then added, "Because of this, the Inner Sanctum's higher-ups looked for my younger sister many times, and they all blamed her for not working hard enough at that time, which was why she didn't learn more about Suyu." Shangguan Yunk spoke helplessly, then changed his tone. "Now that I think about it, according to my younger sister, that guy called Suyu is younger than me, yet he was able to kill an existence like the Blood Emperor. I still can't believe it. I'm afraid that Gu Taishu and the others are nothing in front of such a genius," Shangguan Yunk said. Chapter 835. Suyu quickly composed himself and said, "It's nothing. It's nothing." After they chatted for a while, Shangguan Yunk left, satisfied. Suyu held the small 5-colored tower as he thought to himself. If anything happened to the Shangguan family, even if Shangguan Yunk didn't give him an inheritance, he would still try his best to save them. Moreover, now that he had given them an inheritance, he couldn't just watch them die. Since he didn't have anything else to do, Suyu went to the arena once again. After going through such an intense test, many of the disciples had decided to relax and go to their own places of entertainment. As such, the fighting rooms weren't as crowded as before, and even the illusory fighting rooms were now empty. However, Suyu only had 2,000 merit points left, which wasn't enough for him to enter the illusory fighting rooms. "Hee, little brother, are you short of money? Do you need big sister's help?" Accompanied by a fragrant wind, an alluring hot body approached him from the side. Suyu didn't need to turn his head to know who it was, so he extended his hand and said, "Lend me 5,000 merit points, and I will pay you back in the future." "Hee, why are you still being so polite with me? What's yours is mine, and what's mine is yours, isn't it?" The alluring cabinet mistress whispered softly into Suyu's ear. Her intoxicating aura could make people lose their minds and get sucked in by her. Suyu's expression was as clear as before, and he asked angrily, "Why did you come to me?" The alluring cabinet mistress took out her identity badge, kissed it, and passed it to Suyu. She wore a faint smile as she asked, "Where is the badge?" Suyu took out the badge and gave it to her. She pinched Suyu's badge between two of her fingers. Her snow-white fingers were crystal clear, and she easily and nimbly caught Suyu's badge. Her pretty eyes flickered as she put the two badges together. Her movements were elegant and exquisite. Even though they were simple movements, they still gave people a wonderful feeling. Suyu's heart shuddered as he thought, "What a powerful, bewitching technique." He quickly bit the tip of his tongue to clear his mind. "Well, little brother, you have quite a strong willpower. Do you still need to be so vigilant against me?" The alluring cabinet mistress wore a faint smile as she spoke. Suyu took back the badge and asked calmly, "Cabinet mistress, you didn't come to me for no reason, did you?" This woman always used her bewitching technique to make Suyu's mind fuzzy, so she surely had motive. "Don't say that. Can't I look for you for no reason?" The alluring cabinet mistress chuckled, but when she looked at Suyu's clear eyes, she couldn't help but feel resentful. Did a rock just pop out of it? Can't you appreciate even a little bit of my charm? You've broken my heart. Suyu spread his hands. "Can we get serious now?" The alluring cabinet mistress rolled her beautiful eyes at Suyu. She really had an impulse to strangle this lad to death. After all, there were only a few men who weren't moved by her and would prostrate themselves before her. However, Suyu was the only exception. It seemed like he was immune to her, as he was always indifferent to her. The alluring cabinet mistress was somewhat discouraged, but she recovered her serious expression and said, "I'm here to ask you one more time on behalf of Wei Zheng. Are you willing to join the Left Palace Master's faction? This is a sincere invitation from him." Everyone could tell that Wei Zheng was reluctant when he invited him last time. It was almost written on his face. Wei Zheng. The only impression Suyu had of this person was that he was rather arrogant. Regardless of whether he's sincere or not, I'm not interested in joining any faction, Suyu said sincerely. I joined the Red Blood Palace because I want to cultivate wholeheartedly and wholeheartedly focus on the martial path. If I join any faction, I'll surely be restricted by others, and I won't be able to cultivate peacefully. So, I won't join any faction. The alluring cabinet mistress sighed softly. I'm aware of this, but do you know that it's only by joining the left and right palace masters that you can get more cultivation resources? Suyu revealed a faint smile and asked, Cabinet mistress, do you think that I lack resources? The alluring cabinet mistress was startled by this. Suyu was an alchemist, and he could create resources on his own. The fact that he had earned a large number of merit points in the past month was proof of this. Resources were indeed a bottleneck for disciples who lack connections, but it wasn't the case for Suyu. Fine, since you were so insistent, I will reject him for you. However, you should try not to provoke either faction's people in the future, as you won't have anyone to protect you in the Red Blood Palace, the alluring cabinet mistress said. Suyu nodded. Cabinet mistress, many thanks for your warning. The alluring cabinet mistress left in disappointment and went back to her mansion. Xueqi and Wei Zheng were already waiting for her, and when they saw her return, their spirits rose. Aunt, what's the situation? Did he agree? Xueqi asked hurriedly. The alluring cabinet mistress shook her head. He has a firm will, and he won't join any faction. So, you don't need to try to persuade him anymore. Although Xueqi had expected this, she still couldn't help but feel dispirited. It seems like he really rejected us. As she spoke, Xueqi couldn't help but look at Wei Zheng resentfully. If he hadn't been so arrogant and looked down on Suyu, the situation might have taken a turn for the better. After all, who knew whether Suyu didn't want to join the Left Palace Master's faction because he was looked down upon by others? Wei Zheng's face flushed red, and he became slightly angry. He doesn't know how to appreciate favors. What's so great about him? The Left Palace Master has seen many geniuses, so it wouldn't matter if he wasn't here. In the illusory fighting room, Suyu used up his last merit points and entered it to cultivate. This time, Suyu wanted to cultivate the 9 Dragons' Devil Subduing Art. Suyu took out the devil's hair and continued cultivating according to the cultivation technique. This cultivation technique only required a special dragon's bloodline, and it didn't require any comprehension. Thus, it saved him a lot of time and effort, and it allowed him to cultivate it quickly. This was also the reason why the Buddha's cultivation had gone berserk. The advantage of this cultivation technique was that it allowed one to cultivate it quickly, but its disadvantage was that it wasn't safe. The further one cultivated it, the greater the risk of going berserk would be. However, it was fortunate that Suyu had only cultivated it to the early stage, so he didn't need to worry about it. Everything proceeded smoothly. After a day and a night had passed, 2 coarse dragon roars echoed from Suyu's chest. Just the roar alone caused the entire secret cultivation room to shake. At the same time, 200-meter-long black dragons came out of Suyu's body and revolved around his back. It seemed like 2 demonic dragons were guarding their master. Suyu slowly opened his eyes and revealed a faint smile. He had managed to cultivate the 2nd level of the 9 Dragons' Devil-Subduing Art much faster than he had expected. However, when he looked at the devil's hair in his palm, which had become much dimmer, he couldn't help but click his tongue. Most of the devil's hair had already become dimmer, and only 40% of its pure demonic energy was left. It seemed like it would only be enough for him to cultivate it to the 3rd level. He still didn't know whether he would be able to find a similar demonic energy material. After Suyu collected the devil's hair, he stood up and looked at the stone wall behind him. He then revealed a faint smile and said, "Let's try again." As he attentively looked at the stone wall, many symbols started revolving around it. Then, a proud woman's phantom image appeared on the wall. "It's you again." Suyu was surprised by the fact that the phantom image could still retain its memories. "Are you conscious?" Suyu was quite startled by this. Jian Wuxing's phantom image nodded. "It's a pity that the phantom image left behind by my main body contains a part of her spiritual intelligence. Is there a problem with that?" Suyu was speechless. "There isn't a problem. Do you want to challenge me again?" Jian Wuxing's phantom image asked. Suyu nodded. That's right. I want to challenge you again. Jian Wuxing nodded slowly. Fine. I wasn't willing to accept the fact that we had a draw last time, so I want to challenge you again. If you can defeat me this time, you will get my pointers. This is the reward left behind by my main body. There's a reward? Why haven't I heard anyone mention it before? Suyu was startled. He had never heard Tian Renyao mention that he could get pointers if he defeated Jian Wuxing's phantom image. After all, a prefecture's king's pointers were extremely precious. Many people would probably want to obtain them, even if they wanted to. What's so strange about it? I didn't tell anyone about it because no one can defeat me, Jian Wuxing said. Her words were filled with indescribable confidence. Suyu was slightly expectant. Is that so? Jian Wuxing held her long sword in front of her chest and asked coldly, Are you ready? Suyu nodded, while weaving signs with his palms in front of his chest. The fight had begun. It was still just a single sword strike. A sword comes from the west. Jian Wuxing waved her sword, and it was still the same move. However, Suyu was still amazed by it. This sword strike contained a charm that Suyu couldn't describe. It transcended all sword techniques and reached a higher level. It wasn't just a sword anymore, but a vague and indistinct trajectory. After Suyu restrained his emotions, he shouted softly. Two fierce roars echoed from his chest, while two ferocious-looking demonic dragons came out of it. The two dragons and one sword were fighting in the secret room. Although the sword comes from the west was everywhere and could destroy the dragons, it was still no match for the two dragons' pincer attack. The sword's shadow dissipated, while the incomplete demonic dragons passed through the phantom image's body. The symbols on the stone wall started revolving and emitted bright purple ripples. I lost and you won. Jian Wuxing's phantom image looked at Suyu for a long while before she muttered. Suyu cupped his fists at her and said, Senior, you let me win. You only used a single move, and it's impossible for you to use just a single move in a real fight. Jian Wuxing's phantom image shook her head. This sword strike was the peak strike of my main body when I was still a level 3 fairy. Since you were able to defeat my main body in such a state, you deserve to win. I really didn't expect that someone would be able to defeat my main body's phantom image in the past 100 years. Jian Wuxing's phantom image sighed with emotion. Lad, I will abide by my promise and guide you once. However, it will be limited to cultivation techniques, comprehension, elixirs, magical treasures, and Jojo continent's miscellaneous topics. Suyu nodded, then pondered for a moment before he said, Senior, may I ask about the 5 elements mysteries art that I just got? May I ask how I should cultivate it? And where should I start cultivating it? It's a pagoda, so please guide me. Suyu didn't really understand this object, as it wasn't a cultivation technique, nor was it just a simple comprehension. It just represented the Shangguan family's inheritance. Okay, take it out and let me have a look. I have all of the knowledge left behind by my main body, and as long as the main body has seen it, you should know how to cultivate it, Jian Wuxing's phantom image said calmly. Suyu nodded, took out the pagoda, and placed it on the ground. However, when he took it out, Jian Wuxing's phantom image was startled, then confused. She grabbed the object in her hand, and after she fixed her gaze on it for a moment, her expression changed drastically. Where did you get it? It's impossible. This 5 elements divine prison was already lost in the ancient era. So how could it be in your hands? 5 elements divine prison? Isn't this the 5 elements mysteries art? However, when Suyu was asked about its origin, he kept his mouth shut. Senior, you don't need to worry about its origin. You just need to tell me how to cultivate its cultivation technique. Jian Wuxing's phantom image came back to her senses, but her gaze was still fixed on the pagoda. It was only after a long while that she looked at Suyu with a grave expression. If I were you, I would never take this object out again. Is it so serious? Suyu's heart shuddered. Senior, may I ask what this object is? Chapter 836. Suyu's spirit was shaken, as he clearly knew what an Imperial Saint artifact meant. It was an item that any all-creation experts, including the 9 prefectures' kings, would fight for. Shangguan Yunk had just given Suyu a cultivation art, so how could it have become an Imperial Saint artifact? Suyu had a feeling that this wasn't real, and he doubted whether Jian Wuxing's words were true. You don't need to doubt my words. Jian Wuxing's phantom image saw through Su Yu's mind. The Five Elements Divine Prison is ranked 9,000 on the ancient gods list of 10,000 weapons. It's rumored that it was once owned by an ancient faction, but after that faction was split apart, the Five Elements Divine Prison disappeared along with it. Su Yu was shocked. This wasn't the first time he had heard of the ancient gods list of 10,000 weapons. When Tian Jizi had passed on the Imperial Saint artifact, the Milky Way Star Sand, to Su Yu, he had said that the Milky Way Star Sand was ranked 21st on the list of 10,000 weapons. Su Yu couldn't help but be surprised when he heard the ancient gods list of 10,000 weapons again. It seemed like the divine weapons ranked on the list of 10,000 weapons were at least Imperial Saint artifacts. This was because even the Five Elements Divine Prison, which was ranked at the bottom, was an Imperial Saint artifact. Senior, what's the use of the Five Elements Divine Prison? Su Yu asked. The Milky Way Star Sand was extremely powerful, and he wondered whether the Five Elements Divine Prison, which was ranked at the bottom, was also powerful. Jian Wuxing took a look at Su Yu and said, the information about the list of 10,000 weapons isn't a secret at the all-creation level, so I don't mind telling you. The Five Elements Divine Prison was famous in the antiquity time. It had the ability to seal the sky and trap the earth. No matter if it was the human sovereign, the ancient demon emperor, or the celestial demon who ruled the world, once they were imprisoned in the Five Elements Divine Prison, they would never be able to escape unless the owner of the Five Elements Divine Prison released them. Jian Wuxing said seriously. In the Jiuzhou continent, even if one becomes a Jiuzhou emperor, he won't get the chance to touch an Imperial Saint artifact. Jian Wuxing's phantom image's eyes were burning with passion as she looked at Su Yu and said, Lad, this Imperial Saint artifact is a disaster for you. So why don't you give it to my main body? Of course, I won't let you suffer any losses. As long as you are willing, I can make you my only disciple. You can take over the Lifeless Sword Prefecture in the future and become one of the world's 9 kings. Sure enough, Jian Wuxing's desire for possession of this object was stronger than ever. Who would be able to control their emotions when such a shocking emperor-based saint weapon had appeared? If a prefecture's king held this item in his hand, who in the 9 states could fight him? When the central prefecture's king discovered that Su Yu possessed the divine 9-dragon cauldron, he didn't hesitate to mobilize 5 all-creation realm experts to hunt him down. The conditions proposed by Jian Wuxing were extremely tempting. She was the last disciple of a prefecture's king and the future master of the Lifeless Sword Prefecture. Since then, the central prefecture's king had to restrain himself and would never dare to attack Su Yu again. If Su Yu had been an ordinary person, he would have been so shocked that he would have lost his ability to think. However, Su Yu had the divine 9-dragon cauldron and the Milky Way Star Sand. An exchange would indeed bring Su Yu unimaginable benefits. However, Su Yu had never pursued status. What he wanted was power. Only when one was strong could one truly be strong. Therefore, sacrificing a powerful and heaven-defying emperor-based saint artifact in exchange for a position did not conform to Su Yu's philosophy. Before I answer, can I ask you a question? Su Yu's eyes lit up as he asked. I want to know whether Jian Wuxing's main body knows about everything that happened here. If she knew about it, then the existence of the Five Elements Divine Prison would have already been known by her. Hence, it would be better for Su Yu to take a step back and agree to her request. However, if she didn't know about it, Jian Wuxing's phantom image's eyes flickered and a conflicted look appeared on her face. After a long while, she looked at Su Yu and sighed in a low voice. It's a pity that my main body only left behind a phantom image and didn't leave behind any means of communication. I will disappear completely after being defeated, so my main body won't know about everything that happened here. A bitter look appeared on her face as she said, My main body's biggest mistake in my life was missing such an opportunity. Sigh, maybe it's just my fate. The phantom image contained Jian Wuxing's main body's personality. Judging from her behavior, it seemed like she was a decent person. She didn't seem angry, disappointed, or remorseful. Su Yu heaved a sigh of relief. It's a pity that I can't hand it over to your main body for the time being. Rather than relying on others to survive, I hope to reach the pinnacle of the martial path myself." Jian Wuxing remained silent for a long time. Then she sighed softly and said, "If I get it, I'll be lucky. If I don't, I'll be doomed. Forget it. It's better that I don't know about it. If I focus on my swordsmanship, I might be able to break through the shackles with the sword in my hand." She had already accepted her fate and recovered her composure. "Now, I will answer your first question. How can I cultivate the seals inside? Actually, the 5 elemental profundity you mentioned is the magic art to control this emperor-based saint weapon. However, you mistook the 5 elemental profundity for a cultivation method," Jian Wuxing said patiently. Suyu was bewildered. It seemed like the Shangwan family didn't know that it was an imperial saint artifact when they got it. As for the control technique, they immediately practiced it on the spot. "Sure enough," Jian Wuxing said, "to cultivate the control technique, you must first communicate with the saint artifact's artifact spirit. Only then can you master every step of control under its guidance." Excitement appeared in Suyu's eyes. "Then, how can I communicate with the saint artifact's artifact spirit?" Suyu looked at the artifact spirit and tried to use his soul eyes. However, he couldn't penetrate the 5 elements divine tower. His soul power, which was trying to probe it, was all bounced back. Communicating with the artifact spirit requires the soul power of an all-creation expert. "Although your soul power is pretty good, it's still far from enough," Jian Wuxing said. "All creation." Suyu felt as if he had just been splashed with a bucket of cold water. "However, as your reward for defeating me, I will guide you in your cultivation, and I will also help you communicate with it." Jian Wuxing's phantom image looked at the 5 elements divine prison. The space between her brows split open, and a pure, dazzling beam of light shot out of it and entered the 5 elements divine prison. Jian Wuxing's phantom image closed her eyes tightly, and her face twitched slightly. It seemed like communicating with the artifact's spirit wasn't an easy task. Suyu felt that something was amiss, and when he was about to stop Jian Wuxing's phantom image, she suddenly opened her eyes. Her gaze was filled with surprise as she said, "The 5 elements divine prison's internal space is too vast, and searching for the artifact spirit is more difficult than I imagined." Confusion flickered in Suyu's eyes as he looked at Jian Wuxing's phantom image. He wondered, what's with the painful look on her face a moment ago? Don't I have any recollection of it? "Well, did you manage to find the artifact spirit?" Suyu asked. Jian Wuxing's phantom image nodded. "Yes, I found it, but it's a pity that the 5 elements divine prison has existed for too long, and the artifact spirit's spiritual nature is quite weak. So, it will probably disappear from this world." Suyu was already mentally prepared for this, as it seemed like his divine 9-dragon cauldron and Milky Way star sand didn't have any artifact spirits. "I will help you summon it, and it will depend on you whether you can get its acknowledgement and teach you the controlling technique," Jian Wuxing's phantom image said. Her phantom image gradually disappeared, turning into many symbols that dissipated in the secret room. Her gaze was still fixed on Suyu, and she wore a faint smile as she said, "I hope that one day we will meet in the Juzhou continent. I wish you good luck, lucky lad." After she spoke, she disappeared completely. Suyu stood up and cupped his hands respectfully. "Senior, many thanks for teaching me. I'm really grateful for it." At this moment, the 5 elements divine prison's colorless radiance permeated the area, while a dignified voice drifted out of the 5 elements divine prison. "Is the person who got the 5 elements divine prison still a human? Sigh. I will have to spend a lot of effort to teach him the demon clan's language." Suyu's eyes flickered, and he asked in surprise, "The demon clan's language?" He had gotten Yun Yazi's lifetime research, and he knew all living beings' languages and words. Although he couldn't say that he was proficient in them, he could still communicate with them. This voice was the demon clan's language. "Well, a human who is proficient in the demon clan's language?" A surprised voice echoed from the 5 elements divine prison. It seemed quite surprised. Just after this, the 5 elements divine prison trembled slightly, while a dark green flood dragon, which was as big as a thumb, flew out of the five elements' divine prison and stood atop it. The dark green flood dragon was vivid and lifelike, as if it was a living creature. However, in Suyu's soul eyes, it was just a weak soul body, which wasn't even as strong as a level 1 fairy's soul. If Suyu wanted to, he could destroy it at any time. Are you an artifact spirit? Suyu tried to converse in the demon clan's language. Although the black-green water dragon was small, it was very majestic. It slightly nodded and praised. I didn't expect that I would be so lucky to meet a human who is proficient in our language. In this way, the five elements' divine prison will have a successor. As he spoke, the black-green water dragon stood up like a human, and its shadow gradually expanded. In the blink of an eye, it was 10 feet tall, and it was at the same level as Suyu. Human, this demon is the artifact spirit of the five elements' divine prison. You can call me Yuan Jiao. Yuan Jiao said, I have lived for 10,000 years and served 9 masters of the human race. You are the 10th. Suyu raised his brows and asked suspiciously, Are you really an artifact spirit? How could an emperor-based saint weapon belong to the demon clan? Unexpectedly, Yuan Jiao couldn't help but purse his lips and laugh. Ha ha! The ignorant are truly fearless. The human clan's emperor-based saint weapon? The human clan is ranked at the bottom of the list of myriad beings. You can't even control your own life and death. How could you have an emperor-based saint weapon? The list of eternal beings? What was that? Apart from a human race, were there many more powerful creatures? All of this was for information to Suyu. If I had a choice, I wouldn't want to serve a human as my master. Your human race's cultivation is low, and your lifespan is short. Learning how to control the five elements divine prison requires you to spend your whole life. Moreover, just after you learn how to control it, you will die because your lifespan will come to an end. So, I will have no choice but to serve a new master. If it was an outstanding demon clan member, he would have been able to control it in just 300 years. Moreover, the demon clan has a lifespan of 10 million years, so they can control the five elements divine prison for a long time. Suyu's eyes narrowed slightly. You don't need to compromise and serve a human. Yuan Jiao, who was standing proudly, snorted and said, I'm an artifact spirit, and it's my duty to teach my master how to control a divine artifact. Upon hearing his sophistry, Suyu replied calmly, Is that so? Why do I feel like you are compromising because you are afraid of dying? Even though Suyu had never come into contact with an artifact spirit, he still understood that an artifact spirit also needed to be nurtured. An artifact spirit that didn't have a master would become weaker after being nurtured for a long time. Now, it was so weak that it was only at the level 1 fairy realm. If no one nurtured it, it would probably die. Yet, it still dared to put on airs in front of Suyu. Yuan Jiao glared at him angrily. Human lad. However, he didn't manage to finish his words before Suyu interrupted him. Suyu snorted coldly and said, Listen to me clearly. Since you want to continue living as an artifact spirit, then don't put on airs in front of me. It doesn't matter to me whether you are an Imperial Saint artifact or not. If you aren't willing to do your best to help me control the five elements divine prison, then I will suppress you forever until you die. Upon hearing this, Yuan Jiao didn't get angry. Instead, he laughed and said, It doesn't matter to me whether I have you or not. Ignorant lad, your tone is really arrogant. Isn't an Imperial Saint artifact something that a human like you can meddle with? His words came to an abrupt end, as Suyu's right palm was filled with layers of the Milky Way starlight. It's the Milky Way star sand, ranked 21st on the ancient gods' 10,000 weapons list. Yuan Jiao sucked in a breath of cold air. It thought it was a great fortune for a human brat to possess an emperor-based saint weapon that was ranked 9,000. However, it did not expect the human brat to possess a supreme-grade emperor-based saint weapon that was ranked 21st. Chapter 837. Suyu took back the Milky Way star sand and said calmly, You don't need to know who I am. I just want to inform you that a trifling sacred artifact ranked 9,000 isn't worth much in my eyes. If you make me unhappy, I can bury you in a place that no one can find and wait for you to be destroyed by time. Yuan Jiao was infuriated, but when he looked at Su Yu's right palm, he became really worried. He already had a top-grade Imperial Saint artifact ranked 21st, so he might not really care about a mere Imperial Saint artifact ranked 9,000. After struggling internally for a while, Yuan Jiao's palm shrank until it was only as tall as Su Yu's chest. What he didn't know was that Su Yu was secretly heaving a sigh of relief, while excitement flickered in his eyes. How could Su Yu not be happy about getting an Imperial Saint artifact? He hadn't expected that he would succeed in subduing the arrogant artifact's spirit. If you don't have anything else to say, then let's start learning how to control the 5 elements divine prison, Su Yu said calmly. Yuan Jiao didn't hesitate, and he stopped looking down on Su Yu. To control the 5 elements divine prison, you just need to cultivate the complete 5 elements mysteries art, Yuan Jiao said. Which version of the 5 elements mysteries art do you want to cultivate? Su Yu raised his brows. Does the 5 elements mysteries art have different versions? That's right. The 5 elements mysteries art has a human language version, as well as a demon language version. I translated the human language version so that it would be easier for my 9 previous masters to read and understand it. This meant that the Shangguan family's ancestors had cultivated the human language version all along. Is there any difference between them? Su Yu asked. Yuan Jiao replied solemnly. There is obviously a difference. The 5 elements mysteries art is actually about the comprehension of the 5 elements, and it can only be understood, but it can't be explained. The version that I translated is my comprehension, and it's written in human language, so its content isn't even 50% of the real 5 elements mysteries art. Even if you learn the complete version, you will only be able to control half of the 5 elements divine prison's power. He then added, as for the demon language version, it's the original version, and it contains a great amount of comprehension. If you want to completely master the 5 elements mysteries art and use the 5 elements divine tower's power, you will have to comprehend the demon language version. Su Yu's heart thumped. He knew the demon clan's language, so he obviously wanted to comprehend the most primitive version of the 5 elements mysteries art. Thinking of this, Su Yu could not help but feel grateful for Yun Yazi's gift. This was an indescribably great wealth, and its usefulness was becoming more apparent. How do I read the Demon Clan's version? Su Yu asked bluntly. Yuan Jiao's eyes flashed, revealing a look of joy. Good. It would be great if you can understand the Fiend race's language. The sooner you can control the holy artifact, the sooner I can recover to my peak state. Without any hesitation, Yuan Jiao flew back into the 5 elements divine prison. At the same time, a large number of complex runes that flickered with golden light revolved around the 5 elements divine prison. They looked like a group of mysterious fireflies. The 5 elements profound meaning arts has a total of 900 Demon Clan characters. Each character contains 9,900 intent domains. It takes 100 days for a human to comprehend one character. It will take at least 300 years to comprehend all 900 Demon Clan characters. If you want to master the 5 elements divine prison as soon as possible, you should start now. So you thought for a moment, then tried to use a wisp of his soul energy to touch the first symbol. In an instant, Su Yu's soul energy seemed to have run into a powerful vortex, which engulfed it. Shortly after, Su Yu's consciousness appeared in a splendid golden sky. The sky was brimming with 5 different auras. Gold, wood, water, fire, earth. Su Yu identified them one by one, and he couldn't help but be slightly astonished. What a peaceful and harmonious aura of the 5 elements. The 5 elements reinforced and restrained each other, and if they were slightly unstable, they would be annihilated and thrown into disorder. However, the 5 elements' auras in this space were quite stable. While Su Yu was observing them, the 5 elements' auras started transforming into disorder, just as Su Yu had expected. The 5 elements were mutually annihilating each other, which caused the 5 elements' auras to decrease rapidly. The 5 elements were the origin of all living things, and all matter originated from the 5 elements foundation. This splendid golden sky was also formed by the 5 elements. The 5 elements' annihilation caused the space to collapse and scatter. In an instant, The world was torn apart, and everything turned into a primal chaos. Suyu was in a daze, and he couldn't distinguish between reality and reality. At this moment, a wisp of the five elements aura appeared in the depths of the chaotic world. It was extremely weak, like a sapling, and it seemed like it would disappear at any moment. However, the five elements auras stimulated each other, and they relied on each other to gradually strengthen themselves. In the end, the whole world was filled with the five elements auras. Then, a scene that surprised Suyu appeared. The earth element's aura settled and turned into soil, which then turned into a continent. The water element's aura fused and turned into rain, which nourished the earth. The wood element's aura descended and turned into grass and trees, which covered the world. The metal element's aura settled and turned into a mountain range, which stood tall in the world. The fire element's aura ignited, burning the mountains and warming the surroundings. This is the creation of a world. Suyu murmured, as if he had caught onto something. Then, the five elements world reached its peak, and chaos appeared again before it was annihilated. The world once again fell into chaos after its destruction. The cycle repeated itself, and the world was destroyed, reborn, destroyed again, and reborn again. Suyu felt like he had experienced countless years, and he was lost in deep thought. In the outside world, Yuan Jiao stuck his head out, looked at Suyu, who was lost in thought, and said calmly, "I have to wait at least 100 days before he can comprehend a single Demon Clan's character. Sai, why did it fall into the hands of the humans this time? I don't have much time left." Yuan Jiao still had a great sense of superiority over the humans. If it was one of my Demon Clan's outstanding geniuses, they would probably be able to comprehend a single character in 2 or 3 days. Yuan Jiao sighed helplessly, then retracted his head. "I will come back after 100 days. If this lad can comprehend a single character in 100 days, then he will have an outstanding comprehension ability. If he can't, then I will have to find a way to escape from his control and look for another master." However, when he was about to retract his head, he was startled, and he stared at one of the 900 Demon Clan's characters. He could see that one of the characters, which was flickering with golden light, was quickly fading away, and it disappeared into nothingness. Yuan Jiao's eyes widened, and he said in shock, "The concept of the Demon Clan's characters was comprehended completely? It's impossible. How long had it been? Not even an hour had passed. Even my Demon Clan's peerless geniuses can't comprehend it in 2 hours." In Yuan Jiao's eyes, humans were just lowly creatures, and they couldn't rival the Demon Clan. However, Suyu's performance had surpassed his understanding. At this moment, Suyu opened his eyes slowly, and there was still some kind of concept left in them. If one observed him carefully, they would discover that the five elements aura around his body was even denser than in the outside world. However, as it became more distinct, it started fading away. The five elements are the foundation of the world, and all living things were born from them, while they were also destroyed by them. "I have to control the five elements," Suyu muttered to himself as he extended his palm and clawed at the air in front of him. A faintly discernible five-colored aura immediately revolved around his fist. Yuan Jiao's pupils contracted as he exclaimed, "He has already touched the five elements while manipulation realm. What is he?" Yuan Jiao pondered this matter intensely. Is he really a human? Such a terrifying comprehension ability can only be possessed by one of the legendary high-grade clans, the Goddess Clan. But the Goddess Clan's members are all women, so which clan does this youth belong to? Yuan Jiao felt like Suyu couldn't be a human, and that he should belong to some unknown and mysterious clan. Well, manipulation realm? Suyu had heard this term from Yuan Jiao, and it wasn't the first time he had heard it. It seemed like Bing Wuxin had already cultivated the sword manipulation realm. Suyu didn't know what kind of realm it was, but he understood it from the Demon Clan's characters. Everything had a limit, and no matter how brilliant a sword technique was, it would still have a limit. In a sword cultivator's eyes, this limit was just a shackle that would lead them to an even more brilliant sword doctrine. A mediocre person would stop before the shackle, and his sword techniques would stop there. A genius would break through the shackle and step into a brand new sword doctrine. The realm after the shackle was the sword manipulation realm. As for Suyu, in Yuan Jiao's eyes, Suyu had only experienced 2 hours. Only Yuan Jiao knew that he had already experienced 500 hours due to the time acceleration. Every 2 hours, Suyu would experience the world's destruction and rebirth 100 times. Between rebirth and destruction, Suyu had come into contact with the 5 elements' true essence, which loosened his shackle. In the past, he was proficient in ice, fire, and lightning, but he had stopped before the fairy realm, unable to advance any further. Now, he understood the reason why he had stopped advancing, as he hadn't stepped onto a higher and vaster path. As he held the 5 elements aura ring, Suyu felt like a brand new world had opened up to him. He had come into contact with the 5 elements manipulation realm, which meant that he was like the 5 elements, while the 5 elements were like him. However, he still had a long way to go before he could step into this realm. The strange look in Suyu's eyes gradually disappeared, and he regained his senses. Right at this moment, a ding sound echoed out, and the stone door opened by itself. The illusory fighting room had come to an end. Suyu immediately collected the divine prison and put it in his spatial ring. Then, he restrained his 5 elements aura as if nothing had happened, and his expression returned to normal as he leisurely strode out of the illusory fighting room. After he had finished cultivating, it was time for him to go to the mission hall and accept the mission that would take him to Tinya City. However, when Suyu stepped out of the stone room, all of the symbols on the stone room's walls exploded. At the same time, a bright light shot out of it and soared into the sky. The light was so intense that it illuminated the surrounding 10,000 miles. It wasn't just the outer sanctum that was illuminated by it, as even the deepest part of the fairy confining forest was illuminated by it. In the inner sanctum, Mo Tianxian, who was cultivating, suddenly opened her pretty eyes, while her expression changed. Jian Wuxing's phantom image was defeated by someone. In a secret room, an extremely beautiful and proud woman also looked at the sky. She stood up abruptly, clenched her fists, and asked coldly, "Who was it? Who was the one who beat me to it and defeated her phantom? Who is it?" In the outer sanctum, the great palace master suddenly opened his eyes and shock appeared on his face. Jian Wuxing's phantom image was defeated in the illusory fighting room. Who is it? The 2 lesser palace masters also flew up into the sky, and as they looked at the bright light, they were shocked beyond words. Her phantom image was destroyed by a single strike. Was it done by an outer sanctum disciple? Both the outer sanctum, including the Demon Mountain and the ordinary disciples' residences, were filled with people, and they all raised their heads to look at this magnificent sight. Chapter 838. In the fighting room. Even Suyu was startled by such a great disturbance. When Suyu sensed such a great disturbance, he didn't dare to stay here any longer, so he quickly left before anyone came over. However, it was a pity that, even though he reacted quickly, there were many outer sanctum disciples cultivating in the public fighting room next to the illusory fighting room. So, how could he avoid their eyes? It's Su Yuxian, the supreme central demon. He came out of that secret room. I also saw him. I remember him. He's the Su Yuxian who defeated Xiao Qingfeng in the exam. It's him. Before the exam, he fought Jian Wuxing to a draw, and after the exam, he unexpectedly defeated Jian Wuxing. He must have concealed a great power during the exam. This news spread like wildfire, and in just a few hours, all of the outer sanctum's people knew about it. In the alluring cabinet mistress mansion, Wei Zheng and Xueqi were bidding farewell to the alluring cabinet mistress. The outer sanctum's exam had ended, and they knew which new disciples were outstanding. So, they just needed to hand over their information to the left palace master. As for who would join their camp, they would need to consult the higher-ups. "Aunt, if you need any help, just let me know. I will immediately go back to the outer sanctum." Xueqi tried to persuade her aunt to go back to the inner sanctum, but she refused. Wei Zheng said, "Xuelian, I've troubled you for the past few days, so let's bid farewell here. If Su Yuxian goes back on his word and wants to join the Left Palace Master's camp, please tell him to come to the inner sanctum to see me. I will test him again. In his opinion, Su Yu would surely regret his actions one day. The more he lived in the outer sanctum, the more he understood that if he wanted to cultivate, he would need to rely on a great faction. However, at that time, if Su Yu wanted to join the Left Palace Master's camp again, he would have to beg him. The alluring cabinet mistress couldn't help but sigh when she mentioned Su Yu. All of a sudden, a bright beam of light shot into the sky, causing the whole world to be engulfed in a dazzling white light. It's coming from the fighting room. The three of them were all divine master experts, so they could barely discern the direction of the white light. The alluring cabinet mistress was startled. It's Jian Wuxing's phantom image. It's rumored that once someone defeats the phantom image, the stone wall's runes will self-destruct. Wei Zhang's pupils contracted. Jian Wuxing was defeated. They all knew the phantom left by Jian Wuxing could adjust its strength according to the challenger's cultivation base. Regardless of whether it was a first-grade fairy, a first-grade almighty, or an all-creation expert, none of them had ever been able to defeat Jian Wuxing, who had the same cultivation level as them. She was an undefeated legend. If someone was able to defeat her, it was enough to show that that person was stronger than Jian Wuxing at the same time. If that person grew up, it was possible that he would reach Jian Wuxing's level. His breathing quickened as he said in shock, "Who has such talent?" He defeated Jian Wuxing, who was at the same realm as him. All of a sudden, the alluring cabinet master, Xue Qi, and Wei Zheng shivered, and a figure appeared in their minds. It was Su Yuxian. Could it be her? Xue Qi asked in disbelief. The difference between a draw and a victory was too great. The alluring cabinet master's eyes were filled with delight, and she muttered to herself, "If it's just limited to the outer sanctum, then it can only be Su Yu." Wei Zheng's body trembled, and his eyes became blank. It's him. If he could defeat Jian Wuxing, his terrifying aptitude would surely make him famous in the 18 blessed and heavenly lands, and even in the Jiuzhou continent. Any force would spare no cost to rope in such an outstanding talent. If the Left Palace Master learned about it, he would surely try to rope him in as well. Moreover, if he learned that this person was lost to him, just thinking about it caused Wei Zheng's face to turn pale and cold sweat seeped out of his forehead. He felt like weeping, but no tears would come out of it. He couldn't help but blame Su Yu. "Since you have such potential, why didn't you show it earlier? Otherwise, you wouldn't have had such an attitude when we first met." Even though he was complaining, Wei Zheng still reacted quickly. He tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and rushed toward the fighting room without waiting for the two people beside him. In the inner sanctum, many black afterimages were streaking across the sky. It seemed like there were three groups of people fighting each other, as if they were chasing something. "Senior Brother Liu, we just returned to the inner sanctum, yet Jian Wuxing's phantom image was defeated by someone. Did that person set himself against us on purpose?" Junior sister, his face darkened. They had just returned to the inner sanctum, yet a pillar of light had appeared behind them. In the end, they were ordered by their junior sister being to return to the outer sanctum to investigate who had done it. As a matter of fact, they already knew what had happened. In the outer sanctum, the only possible culprit was the outer sanctum disciple called Su Yuxian. Senior Brother Liu's eyes flickered with surprise, and he said in a grave voice, "Junior sister, this isn't important anymore. We must find Su Yuxian before they do." Junior sister, he followed Senior Brother Liu's gaze and discovered two groups of inner sanctum disciples not far behind them. Junior sister, he raised her eyelids slightly and said solemnly, "It's the Left Palace Master and Right Palace Master's higher-ups. They unexpectedly showed themselves." Senior Brother Liu nodded. "Yes, this matter is too sensational. Even the Inner Palace's Great Palace Master and Palace Master Amo will pay attention to it. We must find out who did it before they do. It would be best if we can invite them to the inner sanctum and hand them over to Junior Sister Bing." Junior Sister, his expression became solemn. She nodded and rushed toward the outer sanctum at full speed. The inner sanctum's three great palace masters, for great demons, and Wei Zheng's group of three people quickly rushed toward the fighting room. The great palace master's face was solemn. He stood in front of the secret room, staring at the destroyed runes on the wall, and said in a low voice, "Did anyone see which disciple came out from inside?" Everyone looked at each other. At this moment, the fighting room was overcrowded, but most people had just arrived. At this time, an excited and trembling voice came from the crowd. This disciple saw it. Swish! Pairs of sharp eyes searched quickly, and soon found a disciple of the Shangwan family in the crowd. The great palace master's eyes flashed. He flipped his sleeves, and an invisible force brought the disciple of the Shangwan family in front of him. "What's your name?" The great palace master sized him up. The disciple of the Shangwan family didn't even dare to breathe in front of him. He lowered his head and said, "I'm Shangwan Fei, a disciple of the Shangwan family in the south." This person was none other than Shangwan Fei of the Shangwan family. "Yes, Shangwan Fei, right? Tell me, did you see the person who appeared with your own eyes?" The great palace master stared at him. Shangwan Fei's legs went soft, and he was extremely nervous in front of the great palace master. "Yes, I saw it with my own eyes." "Who is it?" The great palace master's eyes lit up, and his voice became excited. Shangwan Fei's body shivered, and he almost fell to the ground. He said hurriedly, "It's Su Yuxian, it's him. I can't be wrong, as I've known him for a long time, and I can't be wrong." The crowd immediately went into an uproar. "It's really him. The central demon is supreme. I already said it was him. It's really him. He fought Jian Wuxing to a draw, and he even defeated Jian Wuxing. There's no one else in the outer sanctum besides him." "Hiss, our outer sanctum really has a monstrous genius. He's just a level 3 fairy, and if his cultivation level continues to increase, won't his fighting prowess rival an almighty divine master?" The great palace master's pupils contracted slightly. He was surprised, but he also felt that it was reasonable, as Su Yuxian was the most likely candidate in the outer sanctum. The two lesser palace masters were so shocked that they couldn't speak for a long time. They couldn't believe that the young man they had taken a fancy to possessed such terrifying potential. A level 3 fairy had defeated Jian Wuxing, who was at the level 3 fairy realm. If he could maintain such a fighting prowess that could defeat Jian Wuxing in the same realm, he might become another legendary genius in the Red Blood Palace. The 4 demons all wore different expressions. Bai Shanliang wore a faint smile, as he wasn't surprised by this, while Tian Renyao's eyes lit up. The little demoness rolled her black eyes and muttered in a low voice, "This stinky guy is really so powerful. Well, I didn't ask Uncle Lon to protect him in vain." Bing Wuxin couldn't help but hold the sword in her hand, her fighting spirit surging. Good, good. I haven't run into a worthy opponent for a long time. Su Yuxian, we'll have to fight in the end." The crowd started discussing this matter, all of them exclaiming in admiration. Su Yuxian's name had been engraved in the hearts of all of the Outer Sanctum's disciples. The great palace master's eyes flickered as he asked, "Where did he go after that?" Shangwan Fei smiled bitterly and replied, "I didn't see him. After the strange phenomenon appeared, he immediately disappeared." "He escaped?" The crowd dispersed at the same time, all of them going to look for Suyu. Even if they couldn't befriend him, it would still be beneficial for them to get acquainted with him. In fact, many male disciples even brought their beautiful female companions with them. While the crowd was looking for Suyu, he had already reached the mission hall. This was his second time coming to the mission hall. The first time was when he accepted the Elegant Spirit Mountains mission, and this time, he used the Fish Dragon Badge's privileges to accept Tianya City's shopkeeper's mission. When he went to the mission hall once again, he found that it was much colder than before. There wasn't even a single disciple here, apart from the managers who were in charge of this place. Suyu sweated inwardly as he thought to himself, "Didn't I cause too much of a disturbance?" After all, it was all because of Suyu alone that the outer sanctum streets were empty. Now that it had shown off too much, it was reasonable for him to leave the sanctum for a while. Hence, he decided to accept a mission and leave the sanctum. The mission hall's mission list was divided into the human list and the ghost list. The human list was just an ordinary mission, and whoever got it first would get to carry it out. Usually, there would be more than 1,000 disciples waiting there every day, all of them fighting over the better missions. As for the ghost list, it was a special list. The missions on it were either extremely dangerous or extremely difficult to complete, and they could only be completed with special requirements. Suyu still remembered that there was a mission on the ghost list that hadn't been completed in the past 10 years, and its reward was 3 million merit points. Many inner sanctum disciples had accepted it, but none of them had managed to complete it. They had all died in the process. When Suyu arrived in front of the ghost list, he looked at the skinny old man sitting in front of it. He then took out the fish dragon badge and said, "I want to accept Tianya City's mission and take over a shopkeeper's position." The old man raised his eyelids and examined Suyu calmly. He then took the fish dragon badge and examined it. As he caressed it with his palm, the number 50 appeared on it. The 50th floor's privilege allows you to go to Tianya City once and take over a shopkeeper's position for a month. However, the floor's privilege is too low, and it's only limited to the lowest grade shops. The old man then said, "There are 100 of the lowest grade shops, and there are only 3 vacant shopkeepers. Which one do you want to choose?" The old man took out a document, which had a detailed introduction of the 3 shops. Chapter 839. The Golden Stone Hall, which purchases and sells all kinds of ores and materials, has a debt of 100,000 crystals. The Sweet Tea Garden, which specializes in tea houses and prostitutes, has a debt of 30,000 crystals. The Tonglin Elixir Store, which purchases and sells all kinds of elixirs, has a debt of 300,000 crystals. Suyu was speechless when he read through the list. "Why are they all in debt?" The skinny old man replied calmly, "The well-run stores have already been selected by others. You can choose these if you want." Suyu squinted his eyes. This old man's temper wasn't good. "Well, may I ask if these debts will affect me?" Suyu asked. The old man replied without raising his head, "Since you have accepted the shopkeeper's position, the debts will naturally be counted on you. If the debts still exist after a month, the amount will be deducted from your merit points. According to the rules, if you owe 100,000 crystals, 1,000 merit points will be deducted from your account." Suyu's eyes flickered. "If I turn my losses into profits and earn 100,000 crystals, will I get an additional 1,000 merit points?" The old man nodded. "That's right, but you shouldn't get your hopes up. You're lucky that you didn't suffer any losses. You still want to earn money?" Hee hee. Suyu's expression didn't change at all. "I accept the Tonglin Elixir Store's shopkeeper's position." The old man's face stiffened. He thought he had misheard him. "You want this elixir store that owes 300,000 crystals? You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth." Without waiting for him to retort, Suyu said calmly, "Your duty is just to issue missions, and it's not up to you to decide whether or not they can be completed." The old man's face became flushed as he stared coldly at Suyu. After a long while, the old man nodded coldly. "Fine, I'll give you the mission." He took out half a wooden fish from his sleeves. The patterns on its fracture were quite complicated, and it also contained a wisp of divine light. "This is a token. Go to the Red Blood Palace's headquarters in Tianya City. There's a shopkeeper there who is in charge of all businesses. Give this token to him, and he will arrange for you to work in the Tonglin Elixir Store." The old man threw it at Suyu and snorted coldly. "I wish you good luck." Suyu took the token and said calmly, "Same to you." After leaving the mission hall, Suyu left the outer sanctum and went to Tianya City, which was located at the border of the 18 blessed and heavenly lands in the central prefecture. Not long after he left, the old man's eyes flashed. A bee flew out from his sleeves and flew towards a certain place in the immortal confining forest. There 2 figures were standing side by side, talking about something. Shao family head. Regarding Su Yushin's matter, I am powerless. If Suyu was here, he would surely recognize that this youth, whose face was as pale as a corpse, was none other than Lao Ai. He then said, "In order to kill Su Yushin, I sent 2 inner sanctum divine master level disciples, but they died mysteriously in the elegant spirit mountain. Now, Su Yushin has shown brilliantly in the quarterly assessment and has been noticed by the right palace master. If I attack him again, once the right palace master finds out, he will definitely not spare me." Standing beside him was the Shao family's master, who had been waiting in the fairy confining forest for a month. He was eager to take revenge for his son, and if he did not kill Su Yu, he would not be able to rest or eat in peace. Upon hearing that Lao Ai had given up on chasing after him, his eyes turned dark red like an enraged beast. "What did you say? I gave you 1,000,000 crystals, and you promised me that you would definitely kill Su Yu. Now, you want to go back on your word?" However, Lao Ai wasn't afraid of the Shao family's master at all. He said coldly, "Shao family's master, you still don't understand the situation in the outer sanctum. Your Shao clan's disciple, Shao Qingfeng, was executed by the great palace master because he gave himself away. I don't want to follow in his footsteps. To be honest, if it weren't for your Shao Chunguang, I wouldn't have accepted your task." Shao Chunguang was the right palace master's disciple, and he was ranked 10th among the talented disciples. He was also a member of the Shao family. There was a reason why Shao Qingfeng could hold such an important position in the outer sanctum, and Shao Chunguang was the reason behind it. He was highly regarded by the right palace master's camp, and even Lao Ai couldn't compare to him. It was only because of him, and because he had assumed that killing Su Yu was a sure thing, that he had accepted this mission. He didn't expect that Su Yu would be so difficult to deal with. Moreover, he was highly regarded by the right palace master, so he couldn't attack him rashly. The Shao family's master's face was filled with anger, but he couldn't show it. It was at this moment that a bee flew over. The Shao family's master's expression changed slightly, and he grabbed the bee and placed it next to his ear. After listening to it, a hideous smile appeared on his face. Su Yuxian, you didn't take the path to heaven, but you still insisted on barging into hell. You still dare to go out alone at such a time. You are really courting death." Lao Ai raised his brows, while a cold glint appeared in his eyes. "Are you saying that he left the outer sanctum by himself?" The Shao family's master nodded. "That's right. I bribed the mission hall's ghost list deputy hall master, and once Su Yu accepted the mission and left, he would inform me immediately. Now, he told me that Su Yu accepted Tianya City's shopkeeper's mission and just left the sanctum. He is now on his way to Tianya City. This bee recorded the aura of the fish dragon badge on his body, so as long as we have this bee, we will be able to catch up to him." Lao Ai started pondering this, while his expression became gloomy. If Su Yu was in the sanctum, Lao Ai wouldn't dare to attack him even if he was given 100 guts. But if he left alone and could kill Su Yu without anyone noticing, then the right palace master wouldn't blame him for offending Su Yu after he died. Lao Ai had a sinister character, so if he felt that this plan was feasible, he wouldn't hesitate. "It's a good idea, but I can't attack him myself. If Su Yu escapes and the news gets back to the sanctum, I'll be finished." Lao Ai's eyes flickered as he said, "Why don't you attack him yourself? It's better to kill your enemy than to have someone else do it for you." The Shao family's master snorted and said, "Do you think that I don't want to? But I received news yesterday that I need to rush back to the Shao family to take care of an extremely important matter. I've already been delayed for a day, so I can't delay any longer. I don't have time to hunt down Su Yu, so I still need you to take care of this matter." Lao Ai was a sinister and vigilant person. "I'm sorry, but it's not convenient for me to show myself." Lao Ai's eyes flickered as he said, "But I can persuade the mission hall's ghost list deputy hall master. With his level 1 almighty cultivation, it's more than enough for him to get rid of Su Yu. I will also give him the assistance of several level 9 fairy realm disciples, and he will surely succeed." The Shao family's master's expression softened, and he asked hesitantly, "But is Deputy Hall Master Qi willing? After all, this matter is quite risky, and once it's exposed, he won't be able to gain a foothold in the Red Blood Palace." Lao Ai revealed a sinister smile. "Since he accepted your money and divulged Su Yu's whereabouts for you twice, it's obvious that he's a greedy person. As long as the price is high enough, you can surely invite him." After he mulled this over for a moment, the Shao family's master nodded and said, "Fine, I will leave this matter to you. I won't take back the 1,000,000 crystals I gave you, but you must bribe him to help you." "Of course." Lao Ai chuckled. They parted ways here, and the Shao family's master rushed back quickly. It seemed like he really had an urgent matter to attend to. After Lao AI returned to the sanctum, he went straight to the mission hall. After Lao AI ascertained that there was no one around, he moved his lips and compressed his vital energy to transmit it to him. The skinny old man, who was Division Deputy Hall Master Chi, shook his head and sneered coldly. Lao AI, do you think that it's so easy to fool me? Once this matter is exposed, I won't have a foothold in the 18 blessed and heavenly lands. This deal is too risky, so I can't accept it. Lao AI revealed a calm smile and said, Is that so? You don't want to accept a deal that's worth 500,000 crystals? You've been in the Red Blood Palace for so many years, so you probably didn't manage to get many crystals, did you? He was already so old, yet he had only managed to reach the level 1 fairy realm. So, it was likely that he had never even entered the inner sanctum. As such, he was just an ordinary disciple, and it was hard to say whether or not he had saved up 500,000 crystals in his lifetime. 500,000? Vice Hall Master Chi's eyes narrowed as his heart raced. 500,000. He had never accumulated 500,000 crystal stones in his life. The magnitude of this transaction caused his heart to palpitate with excitement. After a moment of contemplation, Vice Hall Master Chi asked with a deep voice, Is clan head Shao certain that you're willing to use 500,000 crystals to buy the life of a junior? In his eyes, although Su Yu's performance was not bad, he was still just of the fairy realm. In front of a divine master, Su Yu was like an ant that could be crushed to death with a single finger. He didn't know why the Shao family head would pay such a high price. Lao AI said indifferently, You don't have to worry about that. You just have to agree to accept the task or not. Vice Pavilion Master Chi raised his head, and killing intent flashed across his eyes. I agree to it. However, you'll have to add another 200,000, 700,000 crystals. Lao AI's expression became gloomy. He had already spent 200,000 crystals to hire the 2 inner sanctum disciples, so he only had 800,000 left. Now, that Vice Hall Master Chi had asked for 700,000 crystals. It meant that he had wasted all his efforts. However, as he thought about Su Yu's threat, Lao AI muttered to himself for a moment before he replied with a gloomy expression, Fine. After this matter is over, I will bring my head to see you. Division Vice Hall Master Chi wasn't afraid that Lao AI would go against his promise, as he could easily expose him. Hence, he agreed readily. Deal? I will rest until late at night, and I will leave. There are many people here, so it's inconvenient for me to leave my post. After the two of them discussed this matter carefully for a moment, Lao AI stood up and left. Division Vice Hall Master Chi also pretended that nothing had happened and waited calmly for the sky to turn dark. 10 million miles away, the night sky was bright and dazzling. Su Yu flew in the direction of Tianya City for half a day. When he saw that the sky had turned dark, he looked for a secluded place among some rocks to cultivate in peace. He took out the 5 Elements Divine Prison, which had 900 Demon Clans characters, which shone with a golden radiance and illuminated the dark night sky. Human lad, if you can successfully comprehend 100 Demon Clan inscriptions, you will be able to unleash the power of the 5 Elements Divine Prison. At that time, no one below the all-creation realm will be a match for you. The artifact spirit in the cage said, Moreover, comprehending the 5 elemental profundities will greatly benefit your own strength. Using the 5 elemental profundities to the extreme, your offensive and defensive power will be amazing. So you nodded slightly. The earlier I master it, the better it will be for you, right? The artifact spirit said sincerely, Let's consider it a win-win situation. Cultivate well. I won't disturb you any longer. Su Yu's eyes flickered with a shrewd light. He did not trust this artifact spirit, and Su Yu was skeptical about whether or not it had ulterior motives. However, at the moment, the artifact spirit still needed to rely on Su Yu, so he could rest assured. He entered a state of cultivation, and, at the same time, his body entered a process of time acceleration that was hundreds of times faster. By the time 2 hours had passed in the outside world, Suyu was already immersed in the demon clan's language's artistic conception. 400 hours had passed, which was equivalent to more than half a month. All of a sudden, Suyu opened his eyes slowly. His eyes were still filled with the remnants of his artistic conception. Another one of the 900 demon race characters in front of him vanished. He had managed to comprehend 2 demon clan's characters so far. If one observed Suyu carefully, he would discover that the 5 elements aura around him had become denser. Chapter 840. If he continued cultivating, he would be able to comprehend 2 more demon clan's inscriptions. However, he was forced to stop in the middle of his cultivation because he sensed an expert approaching him. The darkness was completely silent, and there wasn't even the chirping of birds or insects. There was only one possibility for such a strange silence, and it was that there was a powerful living being here. Swoosh! A golden light flickered in Suyu's sleeves as he waved it toward the dense forest in front of him. Clang! The sound of metal colliding echoed as the small golden sword was repelled by some kind of weapon. At the same time, 3 black-clothed and masked youths walked out of the darkness. They were both men and women. As expected of the expert who defeated Xiao Qingfeng, "You managed to discover us so easily," the man in the middle said leisurely as the 3 people walked out of the darkness. The one on his left was a man, while the one on his right was a woman. The 3 of them had disguised themselves well, and it was impossible to discern their identities from their outward appearances. Suyu raised his finger and caught the golden sword, then said calmly, "So it's senior brother Baizhang, who is ranked 9th in the outer sanctum, senior sister Qiao Ling, who is ranked 8th, and senior brother Duan Qian, who is ranked 6th. I didn't expect that you and this senior sister would do such a thing in private. It's really surprising." With his soul eyes, no matter how tightly they covered themselves, they could not escape Suyu's eyes. When he heard this, Duan Qian, who was the leader of the group, stopped in his tracks. The 3 people's auras changed drastically, and they seemed slightly flustered. Qiao Ling asked in a low voice, "How did you recognize us? Who told you about us?" The 3 of them suspected that they had been betrayed. Otherwise, how could Suyu have seen through them? Duan Qian shouted anxiously, "Don't be fooled." He then looked at Suyu coldly and said, "What are you talking about? I don't understand what you're saying. We are just assassins, and we don't know the senior brothers and junior sisters you mentioned." They knew that they mustn't expose their identities before killing Suyu. Xiao Ling came back to her senses, and a cold glint appeared in her eyes. "Humph, you are just a dying man. So what are you worried about?" Suyu clasped his hands behind his back and revealed a playful look. "In my eyes, you're the ones who are going to die. So, before you die, can you tell me who ordered you to do this? You are really full of nonsense. Take this." Xiao Ling held a black long sword in her hand. The edge of the sword reflected a strange purple light. It was a long sword that had been dipped in poison. "Wait, don't be in such a hurry to attack." Duan Qian wanted to stop him, but it was already too late. Xiao Ling snorted without turning her head. "I've seen his strength with my own eyes. He only defeated Xiao Qingfeng. It's just a middle-grade legendary arts, first stage, great perfection. It's nothing." When he finished speaking, he, together with his sword, charged towards Suyu like a ghost. The tip of the sword was like a ray of light, and it pierced toward Suyu's chest. 30 feet, 20 feet, 1 zhang. Just as he was about to kill Suyu, a ferocious beast's roar came from Suyu's chest. Xiao Ling was caught off guard. Her body trembled, and the sword in her hand froze for a moment. Sensing that something was amiss, Xiao Ling sheathed her sword and placed it in front of her to defend herself. At the same time, she quickly retreated. However, she was too close to Suyu, so how could she retreat in such a short time? Suyu's chest was filled with a black fog, and 100 feet long, ferocious giant dragon came out of it. It turned into a black light and penetrated Xiao Ling's body. The long sword in his hand was only able to resist for a breath's time before it was knocked away by the gigantic demonic dragon. In Xiao Ling's perception, it was like a mountain had fallen on her when she was still immortal. The feeling of being able to topple the heavens and overturn the seas, as well as the feeling of a tiny human being, shook her soul. She felt a sharp pain in her palm, and the long sword in her hand was knocked away. The demonic dragon had penetrated through her chest and come out of her back. Xiao Ling stood motionless in her place. Duan Xian and Bo Zhang's expressions changed, and they quickly flew over to support Xiao Ling. Duan Xian looked at Su Yu as he asked, "How are your injuries? Are you all right?" After waiting for 2 breaths' time, he still didn't hear Xiao Ling's reply, so he couldn't help but turn his head to look at her. What he saw caused Duan Qian's expression to change drastically. Although Xiao Ling was still standing, her whole body was being blown away by the wind, as if it was a piece of paper. The demonic dragon had penetrated her body, turning her into ashes from the inside out. Xiao Ling had already been destroyed before they had even rushed over to help her. Duan Qian was overwhelmed with shock, and his scalp became numb. He quickly retreated. Bo Zhang's face was also deathly pale, and he quickly retreated to Duan Qian's side. As they looked at Xiao Ling, who had been turned into ashes, their whole bodies shivered. What kind of demonic cultivation technique is this? It's so domineering. Duan Qian's heart thumped wildly, and his expression became grave. He had assumed that Su Yu would surely succeed, but he had never expected that Su Yu would still have an even more terrifying and powerful demonic technique. "You are about to die, so why are you still concerned about this?" Su Yu asked them while he strode toward them. Duan Xian and Bo Zhang's hearts thumped wildly, and as they looked at each other, they turned around and fled without uttering a single word. They shouted, "Deputy Master, save me!" The demonic dragon was too terrifying. Xiao Ling, who was a level 9 fairy, was an extremely powerful existence in the outer sanctum, and she could even defeat the 4 demons for 3 or 4 rounds. But she had been killed by Su Yu in an instant. This caused them to lose their will to fight. Su Yu wore a faint smile on his face. "Senior brothers, it's not good for you to be in such a hurry." As he weaved signs with his hands, a demonic dragon flew out of his chest, roaring as it charged toward Duan Qian and Bo Zhang. In the twinkling of an eye, the demonic dragon had caught up to them, and it was about to penetrate their chests and kill them. Suddenly, a skinny old man appeared behind the 2 of them like a ghost without any warning. He had his hands clasped behind his back, and his gaze was cold and indifferent. When he saw the demonic dragon flying toward him, he extended his hand and grabbed it. The demonic dragon, which seemed like it could topple mountains and overturn seas, was unexpectedly caught by the old man's hand. Thud! However, the moment he grabbed it, the old man's expression changed slightly. The demonic dragon was more terrifying than he had imagined, and he couldn't help but take a step back. He was forced to extend his other hand and use both of his palms to capture the demonic dragon. Exterminate. A seal appeared above the old man's head, and a scorpion pattern was carved on it. After the seal appeared, the scorpion pattern came to life and turned into a 100-meter-tall phantom image. It extended its giant pincers and tried to clamp down on the demonic dragon's neck. Crack! The giant pincers possessed great might, and they managed to tear the demonic dragon in 2. The demonic dragon let out a mournful cry before it dissipated and disappeared. Su Yu's eyes flickered. It was a divine seal. The divine seal, which could only be condensed by a divine master, possessed great might, and it was one of the main reasons why an almighty divine master could crush all fairies. As Su Yu looked at the old man in front of him, he was slightly surprised, but he still felt that it was reasonable. "I was just wondering who it was, and it turns out to be our Red Blood Palace's Mission Division's Vice Master. Why did you travel such a long distance to chase after me? Do you want to discuss life with me?" So you had already felt that this old man wasn't friendly toward him, but he didn't expect that he would lead 3 level 9 fairies to hunt him down. Suyu had only met this old man twice, so he didn't have any enmity with him. Hence, it wasn't worth it for him to take the risk to hunt him down. It was obvious that he had been ordered by someone, and it was obvious who had ordered him to do so. It was either Lao AI or the Shao family's master. Division Vice Master Qi took back his palms and looked at Suyu in shock. He thought to himself, what demonic technique does this lad cultivate? Why is it so domineering? Even a level 9 fairy can't block this demonic dragon's attack. No matter how he racked his brains, he still couldn't figure out the origins of this demonic dragon. This was because, besides the 9 dragons, devil-subduing art's creator, no one else had managed to cultivate it successfully. When Division Vice Master Qi heard Su Yu's mockery, he became angry and said, "You're already at death's door, yet you're still so arrogant. This day, next year, will be the anniversary of your death. Duan Qian, Bozhong, you are responsible for blocking his path of retreat. Leave this lad to me." The two of them clenched their teeth and went around Su Yu's back to block his path of retreat. Su Yu didn't budge an inch, as he didn't plan to escape. Instead, he looked at Division Vice Master Qi calmly and asked, "You're already so old, so why don't you just spend your remaining years peacefully? Why did you insist on taking such a risk? Lao AI and the Shao's family master must have offered you an irresistible temptation." Division Vice Master Qi spoke in a mocking tone. "It's really an irresistible temptation, and even I didn't expect that your head would be so valuable. I heard that you still have some friends in the sanctum, so after I take your head, I will ask the Shao's family master whether their heads are also worth such a price." Su Yu squinted his eyes and revealed an evil and ice-cold smile at the corners of his mouth. "Hee, no matter how many temptations there are, you still need to be alive to enjoy them. It's a pity that you just dug a grave for yourself." Division Vice Master Qi didn't get angry. Instead, he laughed and said, It's fine, as it seems to me that you learned such a demonic technique from a sanctum's elder. If you hand over your cultivation technique obediently, I will grant you a quick death. Otherwise, I will have more tricks up my sleeves than you can imagine." Su Yu shrugged his shoulders. "If you want a cultivation technique, why don't you just try it several times?" Su Yu's gaze became ice-cold as he weaved hand signs with his hands. A 30-meter-long demonic dragon flew out of Su Yu's body and roared angrily as it charged at Division Vice Master Qi. Division Vice Master Qi sneered at him. "You have exhausted all your tricks. Just watch how I break your cultivation technique." However, Su Yu just laughed evilly. "Is that so? Since you are so confident, why don't you increase the difficulty of it?" Another angry roar echoed from Su Yu's chest, and a second 30-meter-long demonic dragon flew out of it. The two dragons charged toward Vicehall Master Qi in unison with a terrifying momentum. Division Vice Master Qi's expression stiffened, and shock appeared on his face. "You still have another demonic dragon hidden within you." He was really startled by this. He had assumed that Su Yu's battle with Shao Qingfeng in the extreme test was the limit of his power. He didn't expect that Su Yu still had a domineering demonic technique that could summon demonic dragons. Just when he assumed that he could deal with such a demonic technique, Su Yu unexpectedly used another demonic technique. Division Vice Master Qi was quite frustrated by Su Yu's continuous concealment of his power. He wondered, how can a level 3 fairy realm lad possess so many mysterious techniques? Moreover, he also possesses such deep schemes. Even though he was startled, he still took out his divine seal and faced the two demonic dragons gravely. The giant scorpion's phantom image appeared once again, and it used its two powerful pincers to grip one of the demonic dragon's necks. It exerted its strength with its pincers, and it wanted to use the same technique to crush the demonic dragon. However, at this moment, the other demonic dragon charged at it, and its ferocious head rammed against the giant scorpion's side. The giant scorpion's body was immediately sent flying several hundred meters away. Division Vice Master Qi, who was weaving hand signs with his hands and controlling the giant scorpion, swayed slightly, while the divine seal revolving above his head trembled slightly. It seemed like the divine seal's attack could also implicate him. Chapter 841. Humph! Division Vice Master Qi snorted as he started weaving hand signs. The giant scorpion phantom image formed by the divine seal became 50% faster and more nimble. The two demonic dragons quickly pounced to the giant scorpion and started tearing at it. However, the giant scorpion's body was now extremely agile, and it was constantly dodging and attacking the demonic dragons with its claws. The demonic dragons were also quick to react, and they were constantly attacking the giant scorpion's body. They were both in a stalemate, and it was difficult to determine the victor. However, while Suyu was having an easy time, Division Vice Master Qi had to maintain the divine seal, which consumed a great deal of his energy. After a long while, the giant scorpion's body started slowing down. It seemed like Division Vice Master Qi couldn't bear it any longer. The two demonic dragons took advantage of this opportunity to pounce at the scorpion's body and bite it. They managed to penetrate the scorpion's body with their great bite power. Following that, the two demon dragons exerted their strength and tore the giant scorpion apart with each bite. The giant scorpion let out a mournful cry, while Division Vice Master Qi groaned. A pained expression appeared on his face, and the divine seal on his head flickered like a lamp that was on the verge of being extinguished. At such a critical moment, Division Vice Master Qi shouted in a low voice, "Lad, you are going too far." He quickly weaved hand signs, which were even more complicated and profound than the previous ones. Roar! All of a sudden, a miserable shriek echoed out. The demonic dragon, which was tearing at the giant scorpion's right side, let out a mournful roar before it was torn apart. Suyu vaguely saw a blur penetrating the demonic dragon's head. However, at that moment, the demonic dragon on the left side started tearing the giant scorpion apart. However, at the last moment, a strange blur appeared and penetrated the demonic dragon's head. This time, Suyu could clearly see that it was the giant scorpion's tail. Its sharp stinger was as quick as lightning, and it didn't leave anyone any time to react. Suyu knew that if he had to face this stinger, he would have no choice but to defend himself. Its speed was too quick, and a fairy realm cultivator wouldn't be able to react in time. Suyu couldn't help but rejoice inwardly. It was fortunate that he had cultivated the 9 dragons' devil-subduing art in advance. Otherwise, he would have had to face an almighty divine master's divine seal alone. Bang! As a muffled sound echoed out, the divine seal on Division Vice Master Qi's head became gloomy and dull, as if it had lost its spiritual nature. Puff! Following that, Vice Hall Master Qi spurted a mouthful of blood from his mouth. His face turned ghastly pale, and his body trembled uncontrollably, as if he had suffered a serious internal injury. His divine seal had been broken, and he himself had been implicated. Duan Qian and Bo Zhang felt a chill run down their spines. A first-grade almighty who had used his strongest divine seal was still no match for a third-grade fairy. What kind of heaven-defying cultivation method did he cultivate? Division Vice Master Qi's divine seal was destroyed, and he was heavily injured, while Suyu was still safe and sound. If Suyu used the 9 dragons' devil-subduing art once again, Division Vice Master Qi wouldn't be able to obstruct the demonic dragon unless he used his body. His old eyes flickered, and he slowly retreated. His face was filled with hatred. "Brat, good. You destroyed my divine seal and injured my physical body. This debt will not end here. Just wait for this old man's revenge." After being in the sect for so many years, how could he not have any connections? As the manager of the faction, even if he did not dare to kill Suyu openly, it was not difficult to make things difficult for him and his friends. Suyu replied calmly, "Who said that you can leave?" Division Vice Master Qi sneered coldly. "Lad, I admit that you are really powerful just because you have an unknown cultivation method. But if I want to leave, then don't even dream about stopping me." After he spoke, he flew away and quickly retreated to the horizon. He had unexpectedly chosen to escape and abandoned Duan Qian and Bo Zhang. Suyu looked at him calmly and did not chase after him. Division Vice Master Qi was right, as he was only a third-grade fairy, and it would be impossible for him to overtake a first-grade almighty. He, who said that one must have a swift movement technique to kill someone. Suyu wore a faint smile as he looked at the sky. A mass of black clouds scattered in the night sky, revealing a bright moon. At first glance, it was really a bright moon, but if one observed it carefully, they would discover that it was actually a bright eye. The bright moon had been covered by this strange eye. A dignified aura emanated from the eye, and it seemed like it came from the heavens, which were overlooking the land. As the gaze engulfed it, all living beings were annihilated and shivered. Division Vice Master Chi, who was flying away, suddenly raised his head and looked at the sky. His whole body shivered as he exclaimed in shock, "It's the heavenly eye!" Anyone would be intimidated at the sight of such a terrifying phenomenon. What was even more shocking was that the eyeball suddenly moved and swept Duan Qian and Bo Zhang. In an instant, the two of them were scared out of their wits, as if they had just been swept by the god of death. Just after that, the giant eyeball fixed its gaze on Division Vice Master Chi's body. The heavenly eye closed slowly, then suddenly opened. Division Vice Master Chi could only shout in fright, "Don't," before he was turned into ashes. A dignified first-grade almighty had been exterminated just like that. Duan Qian and Bo Zhang were so scared that their hearts shivered. Su Yu still had an even more terrifying killing technique hidden. "Junior brother Su, please spare us." Duan Qian's face turned pale, and he looked at Su Yu in fright. He was waiting for Su Yu to decide his fate. It was the same for Bo Zhang, and he quickly pleaded, "Everything is just a misunderstanding. We didn't know that." He didn't finish his sentence, and he just looked at Su Yu in fright. Su Yu turned around and asked calmly, "You didn't know what I was? You didn't know that I was so powerful? If I didn't have any trump cards up my sleeves, wouldn't I be the one lying on the ground now?" He then added, "I can't find a reason to spare you." After all, they had witnessed Su Yu killing a faction's division vice master with their own eyes, so how could he let them live? As for their pleas for mercy, they were now in a weak position, so they would surely beg for mercy. However, once they returned to the faction, they would surely come back to kill him with the help of experts. Su Yu really didn't need to spare their lives. As he waved his hand, the heavenly eye fixed its gaze on them, and as it opened and closed, the two of them were quietly turned into ashes. Just after that, the heavenly eye disappeared, and only a bright moon was left hanging in the starry sky. Su Yu swept his gaze over Duan Qian and Bo Zhang's ashes. They didn't leave anything behind, and even their spatial rings were destroyed by the heavenly eye. Su Yu strode forward and went over to Division Vice Master Chi's ashes. He was surprised to discover that there was a smooth, round, thumb-sized pebble among them. Its whole body was smooth and glossy, and there were many blood-red patterns on its surface. At first glance, it seemed like the growth rings of a tree. "What is this?" Su Yu was startled by this, as it was rare for it to remain unscathed after facing the heavenly eye's heavenly might. Su Yu's heart thumped, and he sucked the pebble into his palm. The pebble's temperature was good, and it seemed like a piece of fire jade. When Su Yu was just about to examine it, his brows suddenly twitched as a premonition of danger welled up in his heart. Su Yu threw away the pebble in his hand without giving it a second thought. However, it was still too late. A gray light beam shot out of the pebble, entered Su Yu's forehead, and went to the deepest part of his soul. "Lad, you are still too inexperienced if you want to kill me." A familiar voice transmitted from the deepest part of his soul. Division Vice Master Chi was still alive, and at such a critical moment, his soul had left his body and hid inside the strange pebble. "Since you destroyed my body, I will take yours as compensation." Division Vice Master Chi spoke resentfully. He was about to seize Su Yu's body and possess it. However, what surprised Division Vice Master Chi was that Su Yu's reaction was quite calm, and a playful smile appeared at the corners of his mouth. "If you had escaped, I wouldn't have been able to deal with you. But you still chose to enter my soul and try to seize my body. Don't blame me for what I will do to you." Soul space. Reincarnation patterns appeared in Su Yu's eyes, and an indescribable suction force engulfed Division Vice Master Chi's soul, which had entered Su Yu's body. Before Division Vice Master Chi could react, he felt the world spin around him, and he was sucked into a dark and boundless space. When he looked at his surroundings, he could only see boundless darkness. "Where is this? Su Yu, what did you do to me?" Division Vice Master Chi shouted anxiously. Swoosh! A person quietly appeared in front of him, clasped his hands behind his back, and spoke calmly. "Dinner is here. Why don't you come out?" His voice reverberated in the silent space, and a strange laughter transmitted from the darkness. "Human lad, did you send me another nourishing meal? Not bad, not bad, as you sent me 3 Divine Master Realm Souls in just 2 months. Lad, I must say that you really have a good reputation." The evil god had made a deal with Suyu in the past. Suyu would provide him with a Divine Master Realm Soul every month, while the evil god would help Suyu cultivate the first dragon body. Suyu examined the drop of blood, and he discovered that it had become much bigger than before. It was also quite plump, and it was much better than before. "It seems like you have recovered a lot. When you tried to seize my body, you weren't even in half of your current state," Suyu said. When the drop of blood heard Suyu mentioning the past, it chuckled and said, "Well, today's weather is really good. There aren't any clouds in the sky, and the sun is rising." Suyu didn't bother to bicker with it. So he said, "This is the 3rd soul. It's fine as long as you still remember our agreement." Who am I? I'm a divine emperor, so why would I go back on my word? You can set your mind at ease. As long as you get the real spirit dragon veins, I can assure you that your first dragon body will advance by leaps and bounds, the drop of blood said. Suyu looked at the surroundings, then said in approval, "Well, it seems like the Divine Emperor is quite happy here. I will leave now, and I will bring the real spirit dragon veins the next time I come here." When he was just about to leave, the drop of blood was startled. "Wait, what aura is there in the outside world?" Suyu was startled by this, and with a thought, a blood-red pebble flew into his soul space. "A Saint Blood Soul nourishing stone?" The drop of blood asked in delight. Its eyes shone with shock, and it immediately pounced at him. As Suyu willed it, the pebble disappeared from his soul space and returned to Suyu's palm, which was in the outside world. As the drop of blood missed its target, it became more ferocious, and it bared its teeth as it said, "Lad, quickly hand it over to me. Otherwise, I will cry in front of you." So you didn't care about it at all. "Even if you cry to death, it won't be of any use. Why don't you tell me what the Saint Blood Soul nourishing stone is?" So you couldn't help but wonder. Could it be a peerless treasure that could make the drop of blood lose control of itself like this? If the drop of blood had eyes, its eyeballs would surely be rolling around at this moment. It then said, "That's right. It isn't anything special, as it's just a stone with rare energy. Lad, it isn't of much use to you, but it is quite useful to me. So, quickly hand it over to me." Chapter 842. Are you really not going to tell me what this is? Suyu caressed the pebble, feeling that it was a good item. The drop of blood turned its head away with a nonchalant look on its face. "I told you, it's just an ordinary pebble. Why are you always so suspicious? Don't you trust this divine emperor's reputation? Back in the day, I slaughtered the heavens and destroyed the earth, staining the starry sky with blood. Why would a big shot like me cheat at kid stuff?" Although it spoke disdainfully, its eyes glanced at the Saint Blood Soul nourishing stone from time to time. When Suyu saw Division Vice Master Chi's expression, he turned his head to look at him and asked, "Where did you get it?" Vice Hall Master Chi's eyes gleamed. "You wish to know? Let me go first, then we'll talk. Otherwise, you'll never be able to guess where this pebble came from. Son of Heaven's Imperial Soul." As soon as he spoke, Suyu's eyes shone with silver light. Vice Hall Master Chi was caught off guard. Just as he was about to retaliate, the surrounding soul space suddenly began to compress, rendering him unable to move or even think. Without any resistance, Suyu easily controlled it with his soul energy. "Where did it come from?" Suyu asked leisurely. Division Vice Master Chi couldn't help but reply. "It was brought out by an inner sanctum disciple who had entered the glittering jewel wonderland before. He sold on the black market as a defective product, but I discovered it and bought it." Glittering jewel wonderland? Here again, Suyu's eyes shone with a strange light. "Do you know what this is?" Suyu asked with a burning gaze. Vice Hall Master Chi shook his head in bewilderment. "I don't know. I've looked through the ancient records of the sect, but there isn't any information on it. All I know is that it's extremely tough, such that no artifact will be able to break it apart. This is also the reason why the inner disciple sold it as a defective product. Beside him, the drop of blood heaved a sigh of relief. It grinned and said, "See, didn't I tell you? It's just a worthless piece of trash, yet you insist on treating it like a treasure." So you turned a deaf ear to him. He recalled the heaven's sun imperial soul and said indifferently, "I'll leave this soul to you." After saying those words, Zhang Xian's soul dissipated as he prepared to leave the soul space. The drop of blood was taken aback, and it hurriedly said, "Wait, kid, leave the stone behind for me." When the drop of blood saw that Suyu wasn't moved, it rolled its eyes and said, "Don't you want to know what this is? As long as you promise to give me half of it, I will immediately tell you its origin and how to use it." "Half?" Suyu smiled and left the space directly. "No need, I'll figure it out myself." After saying those words, he left the soul space. "Why, you old bastard, you're even more cunning than a 1,000-year-old fox. Didn't I just want to take advantage of him? Do you think it's easy for me?" It flew into a rage, flustered and exasperated, as if it had lost something extremely painful. In the outside world, Suyu opened his eyes and observed the pebble in his palm. "Saint Blood Soul, nourishing stone. When I get to Tinya City, I'll see if I can find some ancient books and find out the origin of this object. Since it was coveted by the evil god, it can't be anything bad." Suyu was in a good mood. After Suyu collected the stone and the 5 elements divine prison, he tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and soared into the sky to leave this place. The battle just now had caused quite a commotion here. Even if it did not attract the attention of experts, it could have attracted the attention of demonic beasts. One day later, black shadows shuttled across the sky, and several powerful auras descended one after another. Judging from their clothes, they were all from the Red Blood Palace. One of them was Palace Mistress Kong Chan, and she was followed by several other cabinet masters. They all landed in the vicinity and started looking around. "Palace Mistress, we found 4 piles of ashes." After a short while, the several cabinet masters found the ashes. Palace Mistress Kong Chan walked over and looked at the 4 piles of ashes in surprise. After a short while, an ice-cold look appeared on the face of one of the cabinet masters next to her. "Cabinet Master, may I ask if those are the missing Vice Division Master Chi?" Palace Mistress Kong Chan nodded slightly. "Those are the ashes that were left behind after his death." Vice Division Master Chi was really killed. Upon hearing this, the other cabinet masters who had rushed over revealed their murderous intents. "Who dares to kill the Red Blood Palace's Vice Division Master?" The Red Blood Palace was one of the 18 blessed and Heavenly Land's 2 rulers. Killing a Red Blood Palace's disciple was tantamount to provoking the Red Blood Palace's prestige. "Palace Mistress Kong Chan, this person is too daring, so we must find the culprit and protect our Red Blood Palace's prestige." "That's right. We must investigate this matter to the end." Palace Mistress Kong Chan stared at the 4 piles of ashes and got lost in her thoughts. She didn't pay any attention to the surrounding voices. After a short while, she muttered softly, "One of the 4 piles of ashes was killed by some kind of tyrannical demonic technique, which destroyed both its body and soul, while the other was killed by a mysterious technique. A wisp of heaven's might is contained within the ashes. Could it be that it was the Purple Cloud Palace's Gu Taishu? There were only a few people in the 18 blessed and heavenly lands who had comprehended the pure divine decree, and there was only one person who could use heaven's might to kill his enemies. It was Gu Taishu. He was known as the 18 blessed and heavenly lands #1 genius, and he was on par with Jian Wuxing in the past. His pure divine decree, which could replace the world's punishment, was known to all. Could it be that it was the Purple Cloud Palace's doing? Palace Mistress Kong Chan felt that the situation was grave, so she spoke in a deep voice, "Don't spread the news about Vice Division Master Chi's death. This matter has been upgraded to the Sanctum's secret, and anyone who dares to spread it will be punished severely." The hearts of the other cabinet masters shuddered. What had happened? Why was this matter suddenly classified as a secret? Preserve their ashes properly. If this matter is as I have predicted, the peace of the 18 blessed and heavenly lands will be broken, Palace Mistress Kong Chan muttered. Suyu naturally didn't know that his careless actions had made Gu Taishu a scapegoat. After 3 days of traveling, he finally arrived at Tianya City. In the huge market that bordered the 18 blessed and heavenly lands and the central prefecture, the relationship between the 18 blessed and heavenly lands and the central prefecture was very subtle. The 18 blessed and heavenly lands was located at the border of the central prefecture, and it used to be one of the 5 regions of the central prefecture. However, 100 years ago, after the Great War between the human and ghost races, the 18 blessed and heavenly lands betrayed the central prefecture and formed its own region. Many experts walked out from these forces. There was Gu Taishu, and there was Jian Wuxing from 100 years ago. In the beginning, the central prefecture had attacked the 18 blessed and heavenly lands. It was only when Jian Wuxing, a decisive expert, appeared that the central prefecture became fearful of them. They negotiated a peace treaty with the 18 blessed and heavenly lands and signed an agreement to never attack them again. However, nominally, the blessed paradises were still under the jurisdiction of the central prefecture. But, in fact, the central prefecture's forces couldn't control this place. It was only by secretly infiltrating various forces and eroding the blessed and heavenly lands forces that they could overthrow all of them one day. Only then could the blessed and heavenly lands truly return to the central prefecture's control. Tianya City was located at the border of 2 forces that were separated but actually united. It was a place where crooks and honest people mingled together, and it was filled with many central prefecture's forces. They were here to gather information about the blessed and heavenly lands and understand their every move. No one knew how many central prefecture spies were hidden in the city. This referred to the central prefecture's dark forces that were secretly carrying out shameful deeds. The forces on the surface were Tianya City's many industries. Tianya City used to be the 18 blessed and heavenly lands' greatest trading center, and it was ranked 5th in the whole central prefecture. The trading center was flourishing, and all of the blessed and heavenly lands forces, including the factions, needed to rely on Tianya City's industries to obtain a large amount of resources. This was why it wasn't just the Red Blood Palace and the Purple Cloud Palace. The other 16 factions also had great industries here. How could the central prefecture neglect such a great trading center? The central prefecture's industries here had a profound foundation. Almost half of Tianya City's industries came from the central prefecture. The remaining half was divided among the 18 blessed and heavenly lands' various forces. This trading center originally belonged to the 18 blessed and heavenly lands, but later, half of it was snatched away by the central prefecture. It was obvious how much the 18 blessed and heavenly lands were being suppressed in Tianya City. Under such circumstances, the 18 blessed and heavenly lands industries weren't doing too well, and it would be extremely difficult for Suyu to revive the Tonglin elixir store. From afar, Tianya City's city walls stretched to the horizon. It was so vast that one couldn't even see its end. Such a vast land was 100 times larger than the Blue Mountain City that he had seen in the past. If one didn't have the cultivation of the fairy realm, it would take at least a year to walk from the city's south to the city's north. Even if Suyu had broken through to the fairy realm, he would still need half a day to cross the city. As he stood before the city walls, he suddenly had a feeling that he was very far away. As he entered the city, he was greeted by a cacophony of noises. As far as the eye could see, it was filled with a sea of people. Moreover, there were many experts in the city. Early-stage fairies could be found everywhere, and middle-stage fairies could also be seen everywhere. So you even found many late-stage fairies who were at least grade 7 fairies. Moreover, so you could even sense a few vague divine masters' auras. This was just the tip of Tianya City's iceberg, so you didn't doubt that there were all creation old monsters overseeing such a city. Suyu's heart shuddered. His power was pretty good, but if he was targeted by the city's experts who harbored evil intentions, it would be troublesome. Suyu was on high alert, so he kept a low profile and went straight to the general manager's place. According to the address, Suyu held the token in his hand and went to the Red Blood Palace's headquarters in Tianya City. The general manager was a position that was in charge of managing Tianya City's industries. Usually, only the great palace master Mo Tianchuan's trusted subordinates could assume this position. Not only were they extremely powerful, but they were also extremely loyal. Anyone from a faction who came here to report their work had to present the token to the general manager and get his permission. The headquarters was set up in the center of Tianya City, and it was a 9-story building. This was Tianya City's most flourishing area, and it represented the Red Blood Palace's status in Tianya City. There was an island floating in the air opposite the 9-story building, and it was the Purple Cloud Palace's headquarters. As for the Central Prefecture, its industries owners came from several other regions of the Central Prefecture, and they were scattered all over the place. This was why it didn't have a headquarters. Only the Red Blood Palace and the Purple Cloud Palace were outstanding. As Suyu looked at the magnificent 9-story building, he examined it subconsciously. He discovered that there was a powerful seal on the building's surface, and it gave him a dangerous feeling. Even an early-stage divine master would be instantly killed by the formation if he tried to barge into it. Suyu walked over to the building, but didn't enter it rashly. A middle-aged man, who seemed like a guard, walked out of the cold and cheerless building. His cultivation was surprisingly at the level 1 divine master realm. Even a guard was a level 1 divine master. It must be known that Division Vice Master Qi was also a level 1 divine master. Tianya City's headquarters was really special, and its status was even higher than the elegant Spirit Mountains manor. Are you a Red Blood Palace's outer sanctum disciple? The middle-aged man examined Suyu as he recognized him from his blue robe. Suyu nodded and took out his identity badge. I'm an outer sanctum disciple, Suyu, and I've come here to meet you, great shopkeeper. The middle-aged man walked out of the building and examined the badge carefully. After he ascertained that there were no mistakes, he said, the great general manager is in secluded cultivation, and he can't come out for the time being. If it isn't an urgent matter, you can look for the deputy general manager. The great general manager was the great shopkeeper that Division Vice Master Qi had mentioned, and he was in charge of all the businesses here. The deputy general manager? Suyu understood this well, as it would be strenuous for the great general manager to manage such a large business by himself. Hence, the deputy general manager could be his helper, and if something happened to the great general manager, the deputy general manager could act on his behalf. I'm here to carry out the Tonglin Elixir Store's shopkeeper mission. Please lead the way, Suyu said. The Tonglin Elixir Store? The middle-aged man mulled it over for a moment, but he didn't seem to have any impression of the Tonglin Elixir Store. After all, the Red Blood Palace had several hundred low-grade stores in the outer sanctum, as well as many middle-grade and high-grade stores. However, the middle-aged man suddenly realized something. Oh, are you talking about the elixir store that is in debt all year round? Suyu was left speechless by this, as the Tonglin Elixir Store's reputation was really bad. That's right, Suyu replied. Chapter 843. The corners of Suyu's mouth couldn't help but twitch. A store that had never made a profit and was about to be closed down had been chosen by Suyu. If you had come here 2 months later, you might have had another choice. But now, since you have come here, you have no other choice. Sigh. Other Outer Sanctum's disciples come here to earn a lot of merit points, but you chose the worst one. You might end up following in the footsteps of the previous shopkeepers and have to pay for your own merit points. The middle-aged guard was quite warm-hearted, and he felt sorry for Suyu. Senior, thank you for your guidance. Since I am already here, I will make the best of it, Suyu said. The middle-aged guard chuckled. It's good that you have such an attitude. All right, your identity badge has been checked. Follow me to meet the deputy general manager. Suyu was led by him to a hall on the 8th floor of the building. The side hall was where the deputy general manager handled his affairs. He had assumed that the building would be deserted and that he would be able to meet the deputy general manager easily. However, the hall was packed with people. There were young people, middle-aged people, and many old people. They were all dressed in rich clothes and didn't seem like ordinary people. These shopkeepers are waiting to meet the deputy general manager. You just need to find a place and wait patiently, the middle-aged guard said. Suyu nodded. He noticed that there were several empty seats in the right corner of the hall, so he walked toward them. The middle-aged guard unexpectedly stopped Suyu and said, "Don't go there. Those seats are reserved for the 3 shopkeepers of the high-grade stores. Didn't you see that no one dares to go there? You're just a new shopkeeper of a low-grade store, so it would be better for you not to have any conflicts with them. Otherwise, it will be difficult for you to survive in Tianya City." Suyu knew that Tianya City stores were divided into 3 grades: high grade, middle grade, and low grade. The main criterion for distinguishing them was their monthly profit. Those whose monthly profit was between 300,000 and 1 million were middle-grade shops, while those whose monthly profit was above 1 million were high-grade shops. As for those whose monthly profit was below 300,000, or those who suffered losses, they were low-grade shops. The shop that Suyu had accepted, which suffered losses continuously, was at the bottom of the low-grade shops. These 3 shopkeepers are in charge of the demonic beast material shop, the restaurant shop, and the elixir shop, respectively. As the biggest shopkeepers in each industry, they have the right to call for meetings at any time. For example, the great shopkeeper of the elixir store, who can command the shopkeepers of middle-grade elixir stores, as well as the shopkeepers of low-grade elixir stores like you. It can be said that he's the boss of the Red Blood Palace's elixir stores, and all of the elixir store shopkeepers have to listen to his orders. Suyu's eyes flickered as he asked, "Do we have to listen to everything he says?" The middle-aged guard said, "If you don't want any trouble, he won't go too far. It's best if you accept him." "What if I refuse to listen to his arrangements?" Suyu asked thoughtfully. The middle-aged guard looked around and sent a voice transmission. They have a wide network. It is possible that with just a word, the medicinal pill dealers who rely on them will not dare to sell medicinal pills to you. This will make it harder for you to continue your business. This has happened many times. Do not offend them. Elixir shops made a living by buying things at a low price and selling them at a high price. If he couldn't get the pill, it was equivalent to waiting for death. "Thank you, Senior. I know what I should do now." Suyu nodded, then went to another corner and waited quietly. Clang! At this moment, the side hall's door was opened, and 3 people came out of it. They were 2 men and a woman. They were all middle-aged, and their steps were dignified and imposing. The middle-grade shopkeepers, who were waiting, all looked at them at the same time. They didn't dare to reveal any disrespect in their expressions. Suyu heard a conversation in a low voice near his ears. "It's the 3 great shopkeepers. They talked with the deputy general manager for such a long time, so they must be discussing something important. It's most likely the case. According to the rules, since the desolate evil jungle's sacrificial time has arrived, the deputy general manager must be very worried. Otherwise, if he makes any mistakes, according to the rules, we will have to give a part of Tianya City's property to the Central Prefecture's people. There is no need to guess. It's definitely the case. The Central Prefecture won several times when we bought the desolate evil jungle's sacrificial offerings, and they got a large part of our property. Thanks to these properties, our property has become stronger, and our Red Blood Palace's property has been greatly affected. This is especially the case for our elixirs. Last month, the largest high-grade elixir store, the Heavenly Fragrance Elixir Store, saw its profit drop by 30%, and it only had a profit of 1 million. It almost dropped to the level of a middle-grade store. Look at the Heavenly Fragrance Elixir Store's great shopkeeper, Shopkeeper Fei. He must have been reprimanded by the deputy general manager. Even an old man like Shopkeeper Fei would have such a day. He is usually at his beck and call, and he always oppresses other elixir stores. Many middle-grade elixir stores, which had hopes of becoming high-grade elixir stores, have stagnated because of him. Now he almost dropped out of the ranks of high-grade elixir stores. It's really shameful. Don't laugh at me. Based on this old man's character, I think that he will probably hold another elixir store's meeting and oppress the other elixir stores to replenish his store's profit and maintain its status as a high-grade elixir store. Upon hearing this, Suyu followed their gazes and looked at the middle-aged man, who was walking at the back of the 3 people. The 3 shopkeepers' expressions were quite unsightly, but this man's expression was even more unsightly. It was as if the words, "Don't provoke me," had been carved into his forehead. Suyu furrowed his brows. It seemed like he really didn't come at the right time. After they left, the other elixir store's shopkeepers entered the side hall one after another and were received by the deputy general manager. In the blink of an eye, half a day had passed, and it was only Su Yu's turn. Upon entering the side hall, an old man, who was over 70 years old and had half a head of white hair, appeared before him. He was reading an ancient book which had a tattered cover. His expression was one of concentration. Sometimes he would furrow his brows, and sometimes he would relax. Sometimes he would become lost in thought. He seemed to be in great pain, and he didn't even notice that Su Yu had entered his room. He had a short stature and an ordinary appearance. His gaze was calm, and his whole body didn't seem oppressive at all. However, Su Yu would never forget the unsightly expressions of the three great shopkeepers when they came out of the side hall. Su Yu looked at the cover of the ancient book, which had two strange, tadpole-like characters on it. He didn't disturb him, but just waited quietly. After half a cup of tea's time had passed, the deputy general manager was still frowning and lost in thought. It seemed like he was puzzled by something and couldn't get over it. Su Yu pondered this inwardly. He knew that waiting like this wasn't a good idea, so he said, "I'm an outer sanctum disciple, Su Yuxian. I'm sorry for disturbing the deputy general manager's comprehension of the Wood Clan's mysterious spirit 9 transformations canon." The deputy general manager was displeased by his interruption, so he put down the ancient book and looked at Su Yu coldly. Where did this unruly lad come from? However, he suddenly realized something, and his eyes flickered. "Wait, what did you just say I was looking at?" Su Yu replied in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. "Deputy General Manager, it was the Wood Clan's mysterious spirit 9 transformations canon." Swoosh! The Deputy General Manager stood up abruptly and asked curiously, "Do you know the Wood Clan's language?" Su Yu wore a natural and fearless expression as he replied calmly, "When I was young, I accidentally found a remnant of a book in a cave. There were many records of the Wood Clan's language on it, so I could barely recognize it. These were obviously just fabricated stories. In fact, Yin Yazi had read the Wood Clan's language during his research. The Wood Clan was a powerful spirit Wood Clan. These clans were born with plant spiritual bodies and had high spiritual intellect. They could create their own language, which was the Wood Clan's language." The deputy general manager walked around the table and examined Su Yu in amazement. "I really didn't expect that my Red Blood Palace would unexpectedly have a junior who knows the Wood Clan's language. How many words do you know?" The deputy general manager asked curiously. His tone was calm, and he didn't put on any airs. Su Yu replied modestly, "I know a little." The deputy general manager's eyes flickered slightly. "Great. What does this line of words mean?" He then opened a page of the mysterious spirit 9 transformations canon and tapped on a line. Su Yu took a look at it, then replied without hesitation, "Absorb the essence of the insect, display the heavenly primordial mysterious shadow, break the green mist, stop." Shock appeared in the deputy general manager's eyes as he examined Su Yu once again. His eyes shone as if he was examining a treasure. His eyes were filled with expectation as he opened another page and asked, "What about this line?" After Su Yu finished reading it, he replied calmly, "The green silkworm broke out of its cocoon and was reborn as a butterfly. It retreated from a mortal world and became an immortal. Today, the horned snake turned into a flood dragon, but it hasn't turned into a dragon yet. Enough." The deputy general manager closed the holy book excitedly. His face was full of excitement as he looked at Su Yu. He was like a robber who had just discovered a treasure. After sizing Su Yu up for a long while, he couldn't help but laugh heartily. "Ha ha! I really didn't expect that the expert of the Bug Clan's language that I've been looking for wouldn't be found in Tianya City, but in the Red Blood Palace. It was obvious that he was in a good mood. What's your name?" The deputy general manager walked over and asked enthusiastically. Su Yu cupped his hands at him and said, "Outer Sanctum Disciple, Su Yuxian greets the deputy general manager." Su Yuxian, Su Yuxian, the deputy general manager muttered, but he didn't have any impression of it. "All right, since you're proficient in the Wood Clan's language, you fulfill my requirements. There's an important matter that requires your participation." Su Yu furrowed his brows. Could it be some troublesome matter? Ah, ha ha. Don't worry. This matter concerns the division of interests of our 18 blessed and heavenly lands in Tinya City, and it involves billions of crystals. You're proficient in the insectoid language, so you might be able to play a crucial role. Once you render a meritorious service, the benefits will be beyond your imagination. Suyu muttered to himself irresolutely for a moment. If that was the case, then there was no need for him to reject it. Since it's my Red Blood Palace's matter, I will surely do my best, Suyu said. The deputy general manager was quite delighted, and he heaved a long sigh of relief. After the past few days of depressing matters, there's finally something that can make me happy. What did you just say? Did you come to take the Tonglin Elixir Store's mission? Well, that's fine. You can stay in Tinya City for this month, and after a month, I will take you to that place to show off your skills. The deputy general manager took a wooden fish from Suyu's hand and took a look at it. He then threw 2 badges out of his sleeves. One of them had the words Tonglin Elixir Store engraved on it, and it was the shopkeeper's certificate. The other one had the words General Manager engraved on it, and it emitted an awe-inspiring aura. Deputy General Manager, what's this? Suyu asked in surprise as he pointed at the General Manager's badge. The Deputy General Manager chuckled. This is the Deputy General Manager's identity badge, and seeing it is the same as seeing your true self. If you run into any trouble in Tinya City, you just need to show it to Tinya City's property, and they will obey your orders. He then added, this badge is only used to guard against danger and ensure your personal safety. You mustn't use it carelessly, as it might disrupt the property's operations. Suyu was delighted, as he knew that it would be much more convenient for him to handle matters with this badge. Chapter 844. Understand. Suyu always had a sense of propriety, so he knew when he could use the token and when he couldn't. Okay, I look forward to seeing you shine for the Red Blood Palace in a month. But before that, you'd better keep it a secret. Don't leak the secret that you know Mu words. This is for your own safety, the Deputy General Manager said. Suyu was shocked. This matter involved billions of crystals, so he would naturally be in great danger. Once he was exposed, he might be hunted down by the Central Prefecture. Yes. Suyu nodded and left. Seeing Suyu leave, the Deputy General Manager looked worried. I found another person who knows Mu words. I hope I won't lose too badly in the desolate, evil jungle's sacrificial ceremony. As he walked out of the side palace, Suyu was met with many pairs of eyes. Some were confused, some were surprised, and some were puzzled. Who was that old man? He seemed to have stayed in the Deputy General Manager's side palace for a long time. I don't know him. He must be a shopkeeper somewhere. Otherwise, I would have an impression of him. Although the crowd was puzzled, they didn't pay much attention to Suyu because he looked unfamiliar. Suyu left the hall quietly, and no one knew what had happened in the side palace. The middle-aged guard at the entrance of the hall looked at Suyu in surprise, then chuckled and said, "It seems like you aren't an ordinary outer sanctum disciple. The Deputy General Manager is short-tempered, and he only receives guests for a short period of time. Since you were able to stay for such a long time, you must have gained his appreciation." Suyu smiled bitterly. "I'm just a temporary shopkeeper of a low-grade elixir store. How could I gain his appreciation? I didn't dare disturb the Deputy General Manager when he was flipping through the books, so I waited there. In fact, I only exchanged 2 or 3 sentences with him." Even though the middle-aged guard in front of him was a warm and friendly person, Suyu was not so foolish as to befriend someone he had just met with a few words. "Oh, I see." A look of disappointment flashed in the middle-aged guard's eyes as he led Suyu out of the 9-story building. In front of the building's seal, the middle-aged guard said, "I wish you good luck. If you have any difficulties, you can look for me." Suyu said, "Thank you for taking care of me. May I know your name?" "Hee hee, you're just a guard. How can I have a name? My surname is Ju. If you have any trouble, you can look for me." Suyu cupped his fists at him and said, "I will. Farewell." As he spoke, he stepped out of the pavilion and entered the crowd. As he watched Suyu leave, the middle-aged man furrowed his brows and snorted softly through his nostrils. An impatient look appeared on his face as he said, "It seems like he's really just a temporary shopkeeper and isn't a reinforcement sent by the Red Blood Palace." As Suyu walked among the crowd, his eyes flickered as he recalled the middle-aged man named Ju. He then shook his head and said, "This person is really scheming. Even though I'm just a nameless junior, and I'm still weak, he can still be so kind and considerate." He never denied that there were good, warm-hearted people in the world, but he also did not deny that there were many false good people who pretended to be warm-hearted. The former only lived in a peaceful environment, while the latter lived in a competitive environment. The 9-story pavilion was located in Tianya City, where good and bad people mixed together. There were definitely many factions in the 9-story pavilion, and the environment was very intense. Hence, it was highly possible that the other party belonged to the latter, and he was trying to leave a good impression on Suyu. Of course, Suyu didn't think that there was anything wrong with him. He just felt that he was scheming. Shaking his head, Suyu prepared to walk toward the Tonglin elixir store. All of a sudden, the small island that was floating in the air opposite the 9-story pavilion flickered, and a woman in a green dress walked out of it. The passers-by stopped in their tracks and exclaimed in surprise. Suyu raised his head subconsciously, and his whole body stiffened. His gaze was fixed on the woman, and it was difficult for him to look away. It was a woman in a green palace dress. She was in her early 20s, and her skin was very fair, like the white snow that covered the wasteland in the middle of winter. Her smooth black hair was combed into a fairy-gazing 9-rings bun, and her red plum blossom was inserted into it. She was wearing a green palace dress with ancient patterns that was shaped like a cloud. Her figure was graceful, and she had a dignified and elegant air about her. She seemed like an indescribably noble princess. This was especially the case for her pair of limpid autumn eyes, which shone with a divine light and were filled with enchanting ripples. Once she appeared, she was like a mass of tender and soft water, which was sprinkling coolly on the noisy mortal world, making it brighter and more beautiful. As he looked at the beautiful figure, Suyu couldn't get over it for a long time. It was her, the woman that Suyu couldn't forget. She was Lu Chuyi. Suyu couldn't forget the guilt he felt towards her. Lu Chuyi was elegantly and calmly leaving the floating island. That was the Purple Cloud Palace's headquarters, and she had been ordered to come here to deal with an extremely important matter. She left the island, and the gazes of the outside world couldn't affect her state of mind. She flew gracefully in the air and flew into the distance. However, all of a sudden, her heart skipped a beat. There was a gaze in the crowd that caused her heart to palpitate. She subconsciously looked in the direction of that gaze, but she could only see the gaze of an ordinary person. That gaze had disappeared without a trace. Strange. Did my senses deceive me? Lu Chuyi's slender, willowy eyebrows curled slightly as she muttered softly. She shook her head and left. Suyu stepped out of a deserted alley in the distance, which was filled with lightning. He had a complicated feeling in his heart. He couldn't acknowledge Lu Chuyi with his real body. In her heart, Suyu was probably still living in the distant Jinlong world. Moreover, even if he did acknowledge her, Suyu didn't know how he should face her. I'll just bear with it for now. I'll wait until my power reaches a profound level, and I don't fear any powerful enemies before I meet her again, Suyu thought to himself. Suyu surveyed his surroundings, determined his direction, and headed toward the Tonglin elixir store. After half a day had passed, Suyu finally found the Tonglin elixir store. Tianya City was divided into the inner city and the outer city. Almost all of the prosperous industries of the Red Blood Palace, the Purple Cloud Palace, and the Central Prefecture's factions were located in the inner city. Compared to the inner city, the outer city was in ruins because it had been destroyed by many wars. First, it was affected by the aftermath of the Great War between humans and ghosts 100 years ago. Then, the Central Prefecture's repeated attacks on the 18 blessed and heavenly lands had caused the outer city to be in ruins. Looking down from the sky, one could see that the surroundings were filled with dilapidated ruins. Even though some of the areas had been rebuilt, they still couldn't compare to the resplendent inner city. The people living in the outer city were all martial artists in dire straits who depended on Tianya City for a living. Their power was low, and they didn't have enough crystals. They couldn't afford the expensive houses in the bustling inner city, and they couldn't afford expensive spiritual items. Thus, They could only make a living in Tinya City during the day and return to the outer city to cultivate in silence at night. Thus, the outer city was deserted. The dilapidated streets were filled with martial artists who were hurrying back and forth. In Suyu's words, the outer city was like a slum. As Suyu stood in the sky, the martial artist who passed by him would often take a few glances at him. This was because he was wearing the Red Blood Palace's uniform and was a prestigious disciple of a prestigious faction. Suyu sighed softly. He finally understood why the Tonglin Elixir Store's business was so bad. It wasn't because the previous shopkeepers were incapable, but because the environment was too harsh. After landing on the ground, Suyu went to the Tonglin Elixir Store. The Tonglin Elixir Store was located in the center of the outer city, and it was considered the most bustling place in the area. But walking on this street, the number of pedestrians could be counted on one's fingers, pitifully small. The Tonglin Elixir Store was densely packed with all kinds of small and narrow stores. There were more than 30 elixir stores alone. The shopkeepers in the stores were bored to death and were killing time. The Tonglin Elixir Store didn't have anything special about it, and it wasn't eye-catching at all. If Suyu hadn't been on mission, he wouldn't have taken a second look at the Tonglin Elixir Store. Such a bleak situation. It's much worse than I imagined. Suyu sighed softly. He clasped his hands behind his back as he entered the Tonglin Elixir Store. It was only about 20 square meters in size, and it was a small elixir store. The elixir store's elixirs could barely be considered complete, and most of them were ordinary elixirs that could only be used by people below the fairy realm. There were only a few spirit elixirs that could be consumed by fairies. This was because there were only a few fairies living in the outer city, and even if the store was filled with spirit elixirs, no one would come here to buy them. Hence, its customers were mainly the outer city's poor residents. What do you want? Suyu stopped in front of the counter for a while before a youth, who was about 18 years old, walked over from behind and shouted at Suyu from afar. His voice was ice-cold and devoid of any enthusiasm. Even the shopkeepers are like this? Suyu was speechless. This elixir store is really hopeless. Do you think that I'm here to buy elixirs? Suyu asked expressionlessly. The youth furrowed his brows and asked impatiently, Are you crazy? What are you doing here if you aren't here to buy elixirs? When he reached the store's entrance, he noticed that Suyu was wearing the Red Blood Palace's blue robe. His expression changed slightly, and his impatience disappeared. He then asked, Did you come here to take over the shopkeeper's position? Just give me 2 months' worth of wages, as I don't want to work here for a long time. He was a local of Tinya City, and he was also an employee hired by the store. Since they didn't have a shopkeeper, they had left it to these employees to manage the store, and they were given their wages at regular intervals. Since the store was about to be closed, no one had come to visit it recently, and this was why their wages had been delayed. Suyu sized him up calmly, then nodded and said, Okay, I'm here to take over the shopkeeper's position. How many employees are there in the store? Summon them over to me, as I have something to say. The youth curled his lips. TSK, are you trying to encourage everyone to work wholeheartedly? Are you trying to sell elixirs with a smile on your face? Your predecessors were already tired of it, and they used all kinds of methods to attract customers. So, why do you still need to waste your time? In any case, this elixir store is about to be closed. He complained disdainfully, but he still led Suyu to the back hall for the sake of his wages. The back hall wasn't big, and it was a courtyard that had 4 rooms. One of them was empty, while the other 3 rooms were occupied by a single person. Qing Lu, Ingwan, come out. Our new shopkeeper is about to give us a lecture. Hee. The youth stood at the center of the courtyard and spoke in a self-mocking manner. Suyu's expression didn't change, and he just stood calmly at the center of the courtyard. After a short while, a man and a woman walked out of each of the rooms. They were both 18 or 19 years old, and they were dressed shabbily. Their cultivations were quite low, and the woman's name was Ingwan. She wasn't even at the immortal realm, as she was still in the dragon realm. It seemed like they were all poor residents of the outer city. The youth's name was Qing Lu, and he was quite skinny. He wore a cold expression as he walked out. He wasn't afraid of the new shopkeeper, and he walked toward him at a moderate pace. The woman's name was Ingwan, and she was quite nervous as she ran. Greetings, shopkeeper. Ying Wan was so nervous that her face became flushed, and she stuttered as she spoke. She didn't dare to look Su Yu in the eye. Qing Lu crossed his arms in front of his chest as he looked at Su Yu and asked, "Shopkeeper." The youth laughed mockingly. "That's right, I'm a shopkeeper. He came here to pay us. How much do you owe him?" Su Yu interrupted him and asked calmly. The youth was startled by this, and he wondered, did he really come here to pay us? He then laughed heartily and said, "Did he really come here to pay us? I assumed that he was just another braggart. Did your ears not work well? Let me ask you, how much do you owe him?" Su Yu wore a calm expression, and it was impossible to discern whether he was happy or angry. The youth's face stiffened, and he became slightly infuriated. He then extended his hand and said, 2 months' worth of wages, 20 crystals. Qing Lu's eyes flickered, and he sneered coldly. Su Yu nodded calmly, then put his hand into his pocket and prepared to take out 20 crystals. At this moment, he heard Ying Wan speaking cautiously, "Wait a moment. Wages? We don't have that much." Su Yu stopped and looked at Ying Wan. Ying Wan's whole body shivered when he looked at her. She was quite scared, and she clasped her hands tightly together while biting her red lips. "Is that so? How much is 2 months' worth of wages?" Su Yu didn't look at the youth, but at Ying Wan. His gaze became slightly gentler. The youth curled up the corners of his mouth, and it seemed like he was quite angry. "Ying Wan, why didn't I know that you were so daring? If you dare to speak carelessly again, I will slap your mouth." After he spoke, he looked at Su Yu coldly and asked, "Why are you still in a daze? Give me 20 crystals." Su Yu turned a deaf ear to him and looked at Ying Wan. "How many months' worth of wages do you owe?" Ying Wan was so scared that she didn't dare to raise her head. She just raised a finger and said in a low voice, "I just came here for a month." In fact, apart from the youth, both of them had just come here not too long ago. As for the previous employees, they had already left after they realized that they didn't have any future prospects. "Okay, 20 crystals. Take it." Su Yu took out a small spatial ring, which was filled with 20 crystals. A spatial ring? Qing Lu and the youth were slightly startled by this, as just this small spatial ring cost 10 crystals. This meant that he had just given Ying Wan 30 crystals. Ying Wan raised her head abruptly, as if she was a startled deer. She quickly waved her hands and retreated. No, I don't have that much. I only worked here for a month, so I only got 2 crystals as a wage. I don't dare to take it. How could an employee of such a small shop earn 20 crystals a month? The Red Blood Palace's outer sanctums, disciples only got 100 crystals a month. In Tinya City's slums, 2 crystals were a reasonable wage. I'm a shopkeeper, so I decide how much you get paid. From today onward, the Tonglan Elixir Store's employees will get 20 crystals a month. Su Yu stuffed the spatial ring into Ying Wan's hands. Ying Wan's mind went blank as she held the ring. 20 crystals? She couldn't even earn that much in a year. Moreover, in the future, his monthly salary would be 20 crystals. This was the best treatment that only the employees of the inner city's luxurious and high-class stores could get. Su Yu turned his head to look at Qing Lu and asked calmly, "What about you? How many months did you owe?" When Qing Lu met Su Yu's gaze, he suddenly became reserved, and he unconsciously let go of his hands, which were crossed over his chest. His gaze also became less sharp, and he didn't even dare to look at Su Yu for long. It was obvious that he was shocked by Su Yu's generosity, and his aura quickly weakened. "It's also a month." Qing Lu immediately regretted his words. Why didn't I say a few more months? It seemed like this new shopkeeper was easy to bully, as he didn't even dare to offend Qin Zhe after being mocked by him. Su Yu nodded and threw a small pouch at him. There were also 20 crystals in it. He didn't get a spatial ring, so he was much worse off than Ying Wan. Chapter 845. However, Su Yu was already looking at the mocking youth, Qin Zhe. "This is your salary for 2 months." Su Yu took out a small bag from his pocket and threw it to Qin Zhe. Qin Zhe was overjoyed, as this was 40 crystals, which was equivalent to 2 years' worth of income. However, when he held the small bag, his heart sank. When he opened the bag and took a closer look, he discovered that there were only 4 crystals inside, not 40. He was infuriated, so he threw the bag on the ground and raised his head ferociously. He glared at Suyu like a wild beast and scolded him. "What do you mean by this? Where's my salary?" Suyu replied calmly, "For crystals. Isn't that your salary?" Shinzei was so infuriated that he laughed. "Are you trying to play with me? Didn't you just say that all of my shop's employees get 20 crystals a month? Why did they give it to me while I still get the same salary as before?" Suyu was calm and composed, so he asked him back, "You are also aware that 20 crystals are my employee salary. Didn't you just say that you don't want to work here anymore? Since you aren't my employee, how can you enjoy my employee's treatment?" Suyu looked at the 4 crystals, which were scattered all over the ground, then said expressionlessly, "Since you have worked hard, even if you didn't make any contributions, I will still give you 2 months' salary. Since you think that it's too little, you can go to the inner city's headquarters and ask for it." As he spoke, he waved his sleeves, and the 4 crystals returned to his palm. He then flipped his palm over, and the crystals went back into his spatial ring. Shinzei was infuriated, and he pointed at Suyu as he shouted angrily, You dare to bully me? Since you want to drive me away, I won't. Don't give me 20 crystals a month less. Unless I don't want to work here anymore, I will just stay here and never leave." What a joke. Anyone who leaves a heaven-defying job of 20 crystals a month would be an idiot. So you turned around and sized him up. "What if I insist on driving you away?" Shinzei laughed heartily when he heard him. "You are all idiots from your sanctum. Why didn't you inquire about my name before coming here? To tell you the truth, I am a member of the 3 Murders gang in the outer city, and the gang leader is the brother-in-law of one of my brothers. If you dare to chase me away, I will tear down your shop tomorrow. Don't assume that the Red Blood Palace is great. In the outer city, no matter who you are, even if you are a dragon, you will still have to bow down." He was also a gangster. The more impoverished a place was, the easier it was to create chaos, and chaos was the best soil for gangs to breed. The 3 Fools gang? So you rub his chin. It's the 3 Murders gang. Idiot. Shinzei raised his head proudly. Suyu nodded. 3 Murders gang. Okay, I will remember it. When Shinzei saw that Suyu had admitted defeat, he snorted coldly and said, "It seems like you are still sensible. The previous shopkeepers were just like you, with their noses in the air. But didn't they all cower in the end? Now, don't talk nonsense. Pay me the wages first. 40 crystals, not 1 less. Do you understand? Don't miss a single piece." Suyu clasped his hands behind his back and said calmly, "Are you done talking? If you're done, then leave. You are fired, so you have 3 breaths' time to leave." Shinzei was startled, and it was only after a breath's time had passed that he came back to his senses. He looked at Suyu as if he was an idiot and asked, "Are you AF Asterisk King Pig? Didn't you hear what I just said? I will say it once again. If I don't want to leave, then no one could drive me away." Shinzei acted shamelessly, as he didn't take Suyu seriously at all. Suyu put down his hands behind his back and said calmly, 3 breaths' time is up, so it's better for me to drive you away." Suyu didn't seem to have moved at all, but just waved his right hand, and a tremendous power bombarded Shinzei's chest. Shinzei didn't even get a chance to react before he was sent flying away. Crack! Crack! While he was flying away, many of his bones emitted cracking sounds, and he spouted blood crazily, while he let out a miserable shriek. In the end, his body streaked through the air in a graceful arc, then flew out of the courtyard and smashed into the street. Suyu had almost crippled him with just a casual strike. It's finally peaceful now. Suyu took back his right hand, as he didn't have any reason to be lenient towards such a ruffian, who had damaged the store's reputation. Shock appeared on Xing Lu's face as he cried out involuntarily, "A fairy expert!" The shopkeepers in the past were at most half fairies, yet now, a powerful fairy expert had unexpectedly come. Xing Lu's expression became solemn, and he was quite startled. The arrogance in his eyes disappeared in an instant, and not a trace of it could be seen anymore. When Suyu heard him, he looked at him and asked, "You just said that you still lack something. Is it your salary?" Xing Lu's whole body shivered, and sweat beads appeared on his forehead. His heart was in his throat, and he replied hurriedly, "No, I don't lack anything." What a joke. After all, How would he dare to act rashly after witnessing Qin Zhe's fate? Suyu nodded. Okay, it's fine as long as you don't have it. Qin Lu's legs became soft, and he heaved a sigh of relief. He couldn't help but rejoice inwardly, as it was fortunate that Qin Zhe had attracted Suyu's attention before he had voiced his dissatisfaction. Otherwise, he would have ended up like Suyu. Senior, I'm Qin Lu, and Shizing Wan. Senior, what instructions do you have for me? Qin Lu's attitude changed drastically. Suyu waved his hand at him and said, I'm not a senior, and you can just call me Shopkeeper Su. As for my instructions, just do what you usually do now. Qin Lu was quite surprised by this. He had assumed that the new shopkeeper, who had paid him such a high salary, would do some difficult work. He didn't expect that it would be so easy. Okay, just do what you were doing. I will rest for a while, Suyu said. Qin Lu immediately led the way. The room in the middle is where the previous shopkeepers live. I will help you clean it. There is no need for that. Suyu waved his hand at him and entered the room. He then closed the door and sat down cross-legged. Suyu's soul body entered the 9 jade spiritual pearl and appeared in front of the nursery. Suyu had already planted the seeds of the heart-refining mortal dust liquids ingredients that Elder Liao had found in the nursery. According to the supreme growing soil's miraculous nature, as long as it wasn't a natural treasure like the heavenly orchid silver bamboo, it would usually mature within 5 days. Moreover, if it continued to be cultivated, its maturity would increase. There were 8 kinds of ingredients, and the most precious one was the heartbroken zither grass's seeds. It was a spiritual object that had been extinct since ancient times, and only its seeds were left in this world. Even though it seemed precious now, it was still a common ingredient in ancient times, and it wasn't as rare and difficult to cultivate as the heavenly orchid silver bamboo. Thus, it had managed to germinate and mature within 5 days. Now, what appeared before Suyu's eyes were 2 3-inch-long black-purple blades of grass. The blades of grass were perfectly straight, and at first glance, one would think that they were 2 black-purple chopsticks that were stuck in the soil. A bud was blooming at the top of the blades of grass, and many black seeds were densely packed within it. Many of them were scattered on the ground and fell into the supreme growing soil. If one observed them carefully, he could see that some of the seeds had already germinated, and in another 5 days, they would mature into the heartbroken zither grass. Suyu revealed a faint smile as he used a jade magical artifact to dig out the grass, then took out all of its seeds. He counted them roughly and found that there were more than 30 of them, which he then buried in the supreme growing soil. As for the rest of the ingredients, they were even more common than the heartbroken zither grass. Even without the seeds, they could still be found in Tianya City. However, since he could save a large amount of ingredients, why wouldn't he do it? Now that Suyu had obtained 2 portions of the heartbroken zither grass's ingredients, he could start crafting it now. Before leaving, Suyu teleported to the bottom of the valley. Shunga had a ghost prison token on each of her knees. She was in a deep meditation, quietly cultivating the cultivation technique passed down in the ghost prison token. Suyu nodded his head in satisfaction. His eyes flickered as he looked to the other side. He saw that the little Kylan had learned from Shunga, and it was sitting cross-legged with a black scroll in front of its knees. It was studying it seriously, and its whole body was emitting a faint purple light. Its appearance was so amusing that it couldn't help but laugh. It was diligently learning the mysterious, heavenly crafting secret technique. Once it succeeded, it would be able to help Suyu craft the silver sword. Once it succeeded, Suyu would be able to use the 9 Suns Cosmos Sword Formation's 9 Sun Sword Formation. This was the sword formation that Suyu had been looking forward to the most. Suyu didn't disturb them, so he returned to the outside world and prepared to start crafting the heart-refining mortal dust liquid. He had 2 portions of the ingredients, as well as the spiritual artifact grade furnace that Elder Liao had brought out of the soul-seizing palace. Fire. In the Red Blood Palace, Suyu had the raging flame cabinet's cultivation room, and he could use its earth fire to make elixirs. Suyu wasn't familiar with Tianya City, so he needed to find a safe and reliable place. He might even have to go to the inner city, and it would be best if he could find a place that specialized in making elixirs. After all, that place's conditions were more suitable for making elixirs. "Shopkeeper Sue, someone is looking for you." A weak, stuttering voice transmitted from outside the door. It was Ing Wan. Suyu opened the door and asked in a gentle tone, "Who is it?" He had just arrived in Tinya City, so he didn't know anyone here. So, why would someone be looking for him? It's the shopkeeper's subordinate," Ing Wan stuttered. "The shopkeeper? The elixir industry's shopkeeper?" Suyu couldn't help but recall the gloomy-looking middle-aged man he had seen in the hall today. That middle-aged man was the shopkeeper who ran the largest elixir store in the Red Blood Palace's industries. According to what the middle-aged man with the surname Ju had said, he had great authority, and all the middle and low-grade shopkeepers in the Red Blood Palace's elixir industry had to obey his orders. Suyu, who was filled with doubts, went to the store's entrance. A boy in colorful clothes was waiting for him impatiently, while Qing Lu was chatting with him. When the boy saw Suyu come out, he curled his lips and said, "You took so long to come out. I'm a shopkeeper of the Heavenly Fragrance Elixir store, and I'm here on Shopkeeper Fei's orders to inform you to go to the Heavenly Fragrance Elixir store immediately to participate in the elixir meet." After he spoke, he turned around and left. As he walked away, he said, "I still have to inform the other elixir stores, so I won't accompany you. You can go by yourself." As Qing Lu watched him leave, he said indignantly, "How arrogant! A third-grade shopkeeper dares to speak to Shopkeeper Su in such a manner?" The Heavenly Fragrance Elixir store had many shopkeepers, and they were divided into different grades. The high-grade shopkeepers were still serving the customers, while only the third-grade shopkeepers were sent out to run errands.